Take this time now to acknowledge you, to give you our thanks, to ask your blessings upon our meeting tonight. We do thank you, dear Lord, for the opportunity to live in such a great country, a great state, and a great city and community. We thank you for this, and we ask for blessings now. Let everyone who participates tonight, we will work together to make the best decisions overall and long term for our city. Thank you for this, and we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time I'll call these guys 2023 Newcastle Public Works Authority to order. First time on the agenda is roll call.
Brownell.
Here.
Mike Fullerton.
Here.
Tommy Cloud. Addison. Dean Reed.
Here.
Marcy Marsh.
Item number 2, discussion and possible action on approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion second for approval of the agenda.
Brownell.
Yes.
Mike Fullerton.
Yes.
Dean Reed.
Yes.
Marcy Marsh. Yes.
Item number 3, citizen comments. This is an opportunity for any citizen to comment on any matter related to the city of Newcastle Public Works that is not on the agenda. Remind any potential commenters that comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person, and the chair has authorization or authority to stop comments at his discretion. This time, is there any citizen comment related to the city of Newcastle Public Works that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, move to item number 4, consent agenda. Is there any item any member of the authority desires to be removed and addressed individually? All right, item number 4, consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion second for approval of the consent agenda.
Mike Fullerton.
Yes.
Dean Reed.
Yes.
Marcy Marsh. Brownell.
Yes. Item number 5, discussion and possible action on any item removed from the consent agenda. Being no action on that agenda item. Item number 6, discussion and possible action on approval agreements for scope of duties, responsibilities, and limitations of authority of resident project representative as furnished by Wall Engineering and relating to construction, oversight, and management services for the wastewater treatment plant construction project.
This is an agreement, this would be an agreement with Wall Engineering for inspection and construction management services on a new wastewater treatment facility. Currently, we don't have inspection services contracted out nor construction management, although there is some construction with, Raymond Wall is here to discuss anything on the agreement. The council.
Get her going.
So just, I wouldn't be able to answer questions if I was asked. Is this an employee, that person will be employed by Wall or by us or contracted?
These people will be employed by Wall Engineering.
These people?
Yeah, there are 2 people.
Oh, okay. So they're a resident of Project Reps.
One individual will actually be on site all the time to do for inspection purposes, construction management, from time to time. Looking over the project, making sure everything is being installed correctly, and things of that nature. Same thing we're going through right now with our fire station and with our animal shelter.
Is what is construction management.
Correct.
And so what is the amount of this contract?
$460, I believe it was, for construction management, and that is 22 months for service. The other one is a little over $300,000 for 22 months inspections, of course, all of the inspections. So roughly 750,000. And this would be included also in the on this project.
So, really close to starting?
Well, we open bids the 18th of this month.
Very important.
Now, by the time everything is said and done, I believe Brandon has said that construction would likely start somewhere around November 1st. That's correct. So we're still out of the range.
That's really close comparatively.
Okay.
I'll take those close.
And how long get it done there?
It's a project, about 24-month project, so it's roughly 2 years from notice to proceed. Just to kind of speak a little more to what city manager
So you want
said,
one step to the public. It's on microphone.
just to speak a little more to what the city manager said about the number of personnel assigned to the project, we will have an office on site, so we will have a person there full-time, and then we'll have a construction manager assigned to the project, which will be there about a quarter to half time. We'll have a construction project manager that will also be there 5 to 10 hours a week. Myself, I'll be there at least a couple times a month, so we'll have a lot of oversight on the project. About 5 people working on it all kind of project. This is a big project, and it takes a lot of personnel, a lot of oversight, a lot of staff time. So we will have 5 people in that staff to the project, but one point of contact on site for the city, and one point of contact on the construction management side, and then I'll be the contact on the engineering side.
Thank you.
Motion approved agenda item 6, agreement for skill training, responsible qualifications for resident project management.
I'll second.
Motion second for approval of item number 6.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Gene Reed.
Yes.
Marcy Mark. Yes. Ron Lee.
Yes. Item number 7, discussion and possible action on approval and authorization to enter into service availability water service agreement between the city of Newcastle and the Newcastle Public Works Authority as supplier and the city of Blanchard and Blanchard Municipal Improvement Authority as purchaser.
These agreements, of course, were sent to council in packets. It includes the daily reservation, which is 90%, and this will be for all the agreements. It's 90% of what Blanchard's usage was last year. Okay, through the whole year, the highest month they used last year, so roughly theirs is about 6.4 million, a little bit over that. So 90%, I believe it comes out, I believe it was 187,200 gallons a day is your starting reservation. Now, having said that, that's a number that we put in to start this contract off. Blanchard could potentially come back and request a higher daily reservation. And as speaking with Kenny, their maximum daily reservation could go as high as 300,000 gallons, I believe it was.
Kevin, you want me to speak to this?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Kenny Sullivan, Glenn Sullivan and Associates. Kevin's right. He asked us to look at the model. I know you're having it updated at this time, but I still think your old model is really valid, especially where the supply side goes. We looked at Blanchard and we determined that 300 gallons a minute from their connection would not put any of your citizens in any pressure loss that was noticeable. The other thing we looked at was the total per day, and we feel that 300,000 gallons a day would be about the max that they could take, and you could still maintain your towers and your supply. So when I read through the agreement, I probably would recommend, you're saying 300,000 gallons per day, and then in parentheses, approximately 300 gallons a minute. I would add something in there that says 300,000 gallons per day at a rate not to exceed 300 gallons a minute. Because, I mean, if you do the math, there's 1,400 minutes in a day.
Right.
300 gallons a minute is only 1,000 minutes. That gives you 6 or 7 hours, if they take it at 300, to recover your towers at night.
Well, their actual daily reservation is that 187 to
Right.
130 GPM, I think.
Right.
Is what we put in there, and then Jeff looked at that, and he put in the maximum of the 300.
Right. And I should have clarified that when I sent you the email with those numbers. We really kind of went off staff recommendation for the Tuttle figures. Those do work out to basically 170 something gallons a minute, 24/7. I don't have a problem with that, but Goldsby and Blanchard, we really ought to add that small statement in there.
At a rate not to exceed.
At a rate not to exceed, yes.
How does that work? Like, will it let it, will the valves let it exceed that? But if they exceed, they get some sort of a monetary like, fine? Or is it
That's,
like we can crank it where they can't go higher?
The Blanchard valve is an electronic control valve, and we could set it up that way, or they could set it up that way. It really ought to be on them. If they take 300 gallons a minute, all day long, 24/7, then they would be paying a penalty for going over the 300,000. Goldsby is not set up. Goldsby is a physical propeller meter. I don't even know if it's on your read system. Or if it,
I don't believe.
I don't think it is either. I think they will have to go out there and basically crank down a gate valve and kind of choke it to make sure they don't go too much.
Which, I mean, my first concern is, okay, there should be a penalty, but secondly, we just don't want to go over that still and take us.
Right.
So that's why I was kind of wondering, like, what that looked like.
And to be honest, Goldsby won't be able to take that much until they get a booster station that they're building online, and then they will have their own mag meter, so they shouldn't be able to go too much at that end of it. I think there's a couple of businesses at the most, a rental storage place and maybe something else down there, so they really shouldn't go over once they get their booster station going.
Here, I'd like to echo what Councilman said. It's not just a penalty, but if there was a catastrophic event down the line, we need to put something in place to make sure it does not go up.
Right.
If anything gets shut off, it has to be, south of us, so to speak. You just can't take a chance of that thing flying up. We don't know until our people are in that.
Right. We ought to be able to make sure with their people, the people they've got running the situation now, both Blanchard and Goldsby, I think your staff can work well with them. It hasn't always been the case, I know that, but I really feel that there's a little better communication between the staffs that would have prevented a lot of the problems we've had in the past.
I agree with cooperation, but there needs to be some error proofing.
Right.
Well, and we did put language in the contract that hands on the meter would only be Newcastle people. In the past, that has not been the case. We want to make sure that our people are there to take care of this on site with Blanchard, whatever it may be, but they're not touching until they contact us.
And for Blanchard, we are limiting their access point to, Rich Towers too. Part of our problems in the past have been their connection to Northwest, part of town that was originally an emergency connection.
You're right.
And we really don't, and they pulled a lot
Maybe
from there before. They
I don't
don't
think
want that
they
out.
didn't.
So,
And I'm not speaking of them doing anything untoward. I just
No.
meant if something happened, we need a check on, we need something to respond fast.
We should probably look at the SCADA system and some alarms on tower heights and stuff. I mean, you can't control a break.
Right.
If a break happens on a 12-inch line, we're gonna lose a lot of water in a hurry. We need to make sure our alarms can catch that kind of thing.
Yeah. All the big ones, I don't see it. Made my neck crack.
the rates built into all of these agreements, the exact same rates that Oklahoma City charges us, whether it is reservation, commodity, or excess rates, and there's two excess rates. One up to 20% above reservation, and one that exceeds 20% above reservation. And then, of course, our wheeling fee, $281 per thousand, which is calculated by New Gen. And then also a meter fee based on the meter multiplier used by Oklahoma City times our base rate is charged to these entities as well in these contracts. So everything is equal across the board as Oklahoma City, other than our wheeling charge and the meter fee, because our base rate, of course, is less than what it is in Oklahoma City.
So the wheeling fee came from the new the new water study calculations?
They
Or
did
they
this
did it for us?
specifically,
Okay.
yes.
What's the term of this contract, Kevin?
3-year term.
And the reason it's a 3-year term is we will have a need to upgrade our lines to the point of connection for all of these communities. And so we've got in the contract, it's been discussed with all of them that when that happens, they will bear responsibility for portion of the cost for capacity that they're utilizing of that infrastructure. We're hopeful that they can seek out and get some grant money to help with that improvement, but that's the reason why we're wondering why it's such a short-term contract. Until we can get figured out how much water long-term they want to take and what type of capacity needs they're gonna have to be able to facilitate that.
Everything's moving so fast out here. I'm glad for that. But if Oklahoma City bumps us, it's still written here that we can bump them, even though the contract's for 3 years. So if Oklahoma City bumps us annually, they go up to over in 3 years.
Correct. Yeah, their reservation amount will be reviewed prior to January 1. We'll look at theirs. If they signed on with us Tuesday, tomorrow, then we would look at theirs at the end of December and see what their highest monthly usage was, and then 90% of that highest usage is what the reservation would be set. So it would bump up just like we get bumped up with the city.
We have water in our yards this year, or maybe we'll be in a little bit better position this summer. That's for goal.
No, I'll get it.
True, knock on wood. Okay. We're ready for. Anything else, Earl?
Ready for them?
Okay, make a motion to approve agenda item 7, inter-service availability water service agreement between Newcastle and Public Works and City of Glacier and Glacier Municipal Improvement Authority.
We can include the language that
Oh, yes, with the, added language that we would add that a rate not to exceed 300 gallons per minute.
Second.
Thank you.
motion second for approval of item number 7.
Mike Fullerton, yes.
Dean Reed,
Yes.
Marcy White, yes, Brian.
Yes. Item number 8, discussion of possible action approval and authorization to enter into service availability water service agreement between the city of Newcastle and Newcastle Public Works Authority as supplier, the city of Tuttle and Tuttle Public Works Authority as purchaser.
Again, same thing on this agenda item with the numbers, other than the reservation amount for the total that's been set at 225,000 gallons per day. Based on the use. And we would include the same language, of course.
Sure. Everything else is the same? Okay, make a motion for agenda item number 8 for agreement between City of Newcastle and Newcastle Public Works and City of Tuttle and Tuttle Public Works Authority with the addition of added a rate not to exceed 225 gallons.
Not to exceed 300 GB.
Oh, there's a 300 too?
400 GB.
Oh, 400, there's a 400?
There's 400.
Okay, sorry, not to exceed 400 gallons.
Motion second for approval of item number 8 as amended.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Dean Reed,
Yeah.
Marcy White, yes, Brian.
Yes. Item number 9, discussion of possible action on approval and authorization to enter into a service availability water service agreement between the city of Newcastle and the Newcastle Public Works Authority as supplier and the city of Goldsby and Goldsby Water Authority as purchaser.
This item requires no action tonight because Goldsby is actually doing a study right now trying to determine what they would like their reservation to be set at. So,
We will take no action on agenda item number 9. Item number 10, discussion of possible action on award of bid authorization to enter into contract and for issuance of notice to proceed for State Highway 76 water line relocation project.
All right, as the title announces, this is relocating a water line along State Highway 76 in preparation for widening that we've been waiting on for years and years and years.
And you're,
And you,
And if you recall, when we sent this out for bid, we had our base bid, which is exactly what ODOT will reimburse. They paid the engineering on it, they paid our DEQ fees on it for relocating our pump stations. The base bid, we chose to go out for an alternate bid to upgrade from 6 and 8 inch to 12-inch line. And also kind of fill in some gaps that we had along 76 where we had a 6-inch line, but the ultimate goal was to get a 12-inch from 37 on down. So that's what's before you right now. The base bid would be totally funded by ODOT. The alternate bid, ODOT would fund up to the base bid amount and the additional 570 something.
585 or something.
The additional,
Those are the two bids the in package, the original.
those, yes, there's two contractors, but there's two different bids from both contractors.
okay.
We have not worked with this contractor before. We chased down, they do a lot of work in Oklahoma City. We chased down two different Oklahoma City inspectors who said, you know, I wouldn't hesitate to give them another job. They thought that they were respectable, so we've got no reason not to award to our low bid.
It's just the one on the left, Mayfield.
Mayfield. Base bid was just over 2 million. We only got two bidders, but we followed full competitive bid law. We don't think that's gonna be a problem. ODOT asked for 3 bids, but I don't know that they were expecting us to follow. Most of their stuff, they don't follow competitive bid. They go out and get 3 quotes. So we followed full state competitive bid law, so 2 should be good, and I think these are good bids.
basically, we're upgrading to a 12-inch line.
We'd like to, we would recommend it, yes.
And that'll take us from where? The,
Basically get us a 12-inch line from Highway 37 down almost a quarter mile south of Northwest 24th. And then another, we will still have a gap between there and Fox Lane. And then we've got 12-inch from Fox Lane down to 16th. And then another short stretch down by 24th.
is that gonna help with, pressures then on that part of town? Because I know we're always concerned, what did that do? I don't really know.
So, it will,
I think it will some. It's definitely going to help in the long run. It's not like we're running an additional 12-inch line all the way back to the tower.
Right.
We're not doing that. But this does set us up for future expansion, yes, that has been needed for a long time. With the ultimate goal of, you know, right now we've basically got 3 booster stations that kind of serve that area from north to south. We'd like to cut that back to 1 and tie those pressure zones together eventually.
It's quite a bit more.
Yes.
And I think you just said it, Kenny, and I missed it, as far south as they're going with the widening, is that what we're going, or are we going?
No, we didn't. We didn't go all the way
Not
further
that-
south.
Part of that way.
We just kind of filled in some gaps.
That's right.
This is an area where we will have to move our line,
Right.
and so we chose to go ahead and upgrade since we were having to move it at this point in time. ODOT was paying the bulk of the cost.
Right, right.
We don't have to rebuild our line further south,
Right. So we don't have to remove our line the entire length of that?
all the way down to, correct.
Okay.
No, we'll have a short stretch in there. Well, a short half mile maybe, but we'll have a 12 and a 6.
Okay.
They weren't going to do anything with our 6 if you accept the alternate bid. So
Okay.
we're going to go ahead and put a 12 in. Yes.
Chipping away at it.
Water's big concern.
Chipping away at it is a good term.
Right, there you go, eating it off.
Better than a 2-inch
Right,
line.
it's-
Yeah, that's right. Seen a lot of those, haven't I?
We have.
Number 10.
I make a motion to approve agenda items 10 and to go with the alternate bid for the 12-inch upgrade.
Selecting,
But
selecting.
selecting, Mayfield,
I'll second.
Motion second for approval of item number 10.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Gene Reed,
Yes.
Marcy White, yes. Carl.
Yes. Item number 11, not the treasurer's report. Our city treasurer is ill this evening, not able to be here. We did all receive that email from her, should have. So are there any questions anyone has, Kevin, about the treasurer's report? Item number 12, general manager's comments.
We're still getting a lot of work done out of the water treatment plant. The last weekend, 2 weekends ago, actually, not this past weekend, they were producing 2.3 to 2.4 million gallons per day at the water plant for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we're making some really good upgrades to that water plant. It's just taking time to get a lot of those parts in, of course, get them replaced, and it's very expensive. Shipping away at that, we're getting there very quickly.
Right, that's working
I've been,
in the long haul.
maxed out at about 2.8, that's probably pushing it right now, but we'll take the train offline this winter again and do some tweaking as well. And do some things we can't really do when we're trying to get the capacity out of it, but doing good.
Kudos to whoever we got, what they're doing over there. It's helping us.
They have,
Yeah.
well, we have a superintendent, assistant superintendent, and we actually hired a water plant manager that was all pretty well.
Great. We're growing up.
Sure, yeah, and so, council approved, striping of all the east-west roads in this current budget. Country Club was added to that list. It is now striped all the way through, from 37 all the way through to 16th Street. They've got Northwest 16th marked. Probably striping that tomorrow, and they'll do 24th. We're getting ready to do the, chip seals on north, 16th, 24th, and then once that's done, they'll come back in and stripe that as well. So it's moving along pretty quick.
What did they do? Country
They,
Oh, I was like, dang, I really missed it. I go on that every day. I've been up to
Wasn't there this morning when I went to work, and it was there when I came home.
I didn't even leave the house, so I'm like, dang, I don't pay attention, but it's because they did it today.
yeah.
Yay.
Very good. All right, item 13, any trustees' comments? 14 is adjournment.
Motion for adjournment?
Motion second for adjournment, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. This time I'll call the July 10th, 2023 meeting of Newcastle City Council to order. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Ron Aaron,
Here.
Mike Fullerton,
Here.
Tommy Klein, absent, Gene Reed,
Here.
Marcy White.
Item number 2, discussion of possible action on approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion and second for approval of the agenda.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Gene Reed,
Yes.
Marcy White, yes, Ron Aaron.
Yes. Item number 3, citizens' comments. This is an opportunity for any citizen to comment on any matter related to the city of Newcastle that is not on the agenda. Seeing none, item number 4, consent agenda. Does there any member of council that will require any item on the consent agenda be removed and discussed individually? Item number 4, consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion second for approval of the consent agenda.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Gene Reed,
Yes.
Marcy White, yes, Ron Aaron.
Yes. Item number 5, discussion of possible action on any items removed from the consent agenda. Be no action on that agenda item. Item number 6, discussion of possible action on recommendation to the planning commission. Item 6A, public hearing, discussion and possible action to approve an application for rezoning from Key1 Suburban Estate Residential to PUD Planning and Development. Chickasaw Crossing LLC, managing member David Ash, applicant located in the south after southwest of the southwest northwest, and a part of the southwest border of section 27, township 9 north, range 4 west, Indian Meridian, Plain County, Oklahoma, property address, generally located on the north side of Southwest 24th Street, west of Lake View Drive, Newcastle, Oklahoma. Case number R 2023-006, continuing to the July 31st, 2022 regular planning commission meeting as per the request of the applicant. Do we need to continue that on the agenda?
I think
I'll make a motion to continue item 6A to our next regular scheduled meeting.
Second.
Motion second for continuance.
Mike Fulton?
Yes.
Gene Reed?
Yes.
Marcy White? Yes, John?
Yes. Item 6B, public hearing, discussion of possible action, planning commission recommendation to approve an application for rezone CC2, community commercial district, PUD plan unit development for the Warren Butler located in Newcastle, section 31, township 10 North, range 4 West, Indian Meridian, Plain County, Oklahoma, and for adoption of ordinance number 958, property location 3239 and 3641 Northwest 32nd Street, Newcastle, Oklahoma, case number R2023-007.
Good evening, council. Janae Greenlee with the planning department. As you stated, this request was a rezoning from CC2 Community Commercial District to PUD Planned Unit Development District. The owner of the property is Mr. Laverne Butler. The property there's two addresses here because it's one building, two offices, 3239 and 3241 Northwest 32nd Street. It is approximately 2.5 acres. This is the location here. And you can see the zoning CC2 to the east and west of that. This request is basically because Mr. Butler wanted to have a wrecking service operate out of this property. Wreckers are no longer allowed in CC2. That ordinance was changed. They're only allowed in industrial zoning districts. And instead of going to an industrial zoning district and fronting on Highway 37, staff directed him to a PUD that would allow him only to add that one unit. So he can have the wrecker service in the rear behind a opaque fence. They'll have a shared access. He will, the office in front will be allowed to have his office there, but all the wrecking activities will take place behind in this fenced-in area here, and you can see the hash marks here. This is the shared access, so we can have another tenant in that office building, shared access, and this is where the wrecker will be. And any of the stored vehicles, which by state can only have up to 40 vehicles in that yard at one time. To the north is E2, and east, like I said, is CC2. The south is Ag, and to the west is CC2. We did not get any protest regarding this request, and planning staff did make recommendation and supports this request, and planning commission did recommend approval 4-0. Happy to answer any questions.
The hash area that's shown on the right there, it's a pretty good distance back to the property line to the adjacent residential zone.
That is correct.
And that cannot be changed without a revision, but
That is correct. He has to follow the site plan to not enlarge that area.
council. Right west of the Great Park.
Oh,
Yeah, here's B raised, here's the church, and then there's a church here to this side.
Is there any public comment concerning this agenda item?
Mr. Butler is here if you have any additional questions for him.
I don't have any.
Okay.
I was gonna note, okay, this use is a continuation of what has been this. And it's been operated pretty satisfactory. And it had.
It functioned as a,
Excuse me, sir.
Butler.
Any comments
Go
that
ahead.
you made from the podium?
I mean, yeah, I'm Laverne Butler. This property was developed 10 years ago. It was leased initially as a wrecker service. The rules were changed in 2020. I wasn't aware of it at the time because I wasn't even interested in functioning. I asked the people to leave because I wasn't happy with the situation, and I've got a real good client, and I highly recommend it should bring me on me back what it originally was designed. Everything's in place, functional, ready to go. So any questions, we'll be glad.
Mayor, I have a question. Rules or ordinances or details were in place to me. If they were not to keep it neat, everything. I mean,
If they were out of compliance, then
Yeah.
code enforcement would be sent out there and then we'd address it that way. And we would talk with Mr. Butler and his tenant and, take it from there
I don't
and make them be
anticipate,
in
I don't
compliance.
anticipate that, but we have,
There is
we have
mechanism.
a few sites around that people saying, why did y'all let that happen?
Come by and look at it, it's been functional.
No doubt about it. I think about down the road, if anything changes, and code enforcement.
Yeah, that's right.
I agree. Safe drive.
Okay, comments? All right.
I'll make a motion for agenda item 6B.
Second.
Motion second for approval of item number 6B.
Mike Littleton,
Yes.
Kenny Rogers,
Yeah.
Marcy White, yes, Sarah.
Yes. Item number 6C, discussion of possible action on adoption of emergency clause, ordinance number 948.
Motion for agenda item 6E.
Second.
Motion second for approval of 6C.
Mike Littleton,
Yes.
Marcy White, yes, Sarah.
Yes.
I'm sorry. We got Sherry.
Yes.
Item number 6D, public hearing discussion and possible action on an application for rezoning from agriculture to E1 purpose and residential. Located Rice Creekside Estates LLC, located in the northeast quarter, section 6, township 8 north, range 3 west, within the meridian, Plain County, Oklahoma. Property location, the south side of Southeast 32nd Street, part of 190 South May Avenue, Newcastle, Oklahoma, case number 2023-008. The July 31, 2023 regular planning commission meeting that proposed to the applicant. I make a motion to continue this item for next regular scheduled meeting.
Second.
Motion second for continuance.
Mike Littleton,
Yes.
Kenny Rogers,
Yes.
Marcy White, yes, Sarah.
Yes. 6E, public hearing discussion and possible action on planning commission recommendation to approve an application for use permit and review for conditional use permit for an oil and gas well for RC Sawyer White, 4 Point Energy, Beaver Ridge, 28X33-9-4, 1HA, north location in section 21, township 9 north, range 4 west, in the meridian, Plain County, Oklahoma. Property location, north side of Southwest 16th Street, parcel 2000 east of South Rockwell Avenue, Newcastle, Oklahoma. Case number UR 2023-020.
As you stated, this item is for a use permitted on review for Mr. White and 4 Point Energy for the Riva Ridge oil and gas well, a new pad site, 2,000 feet east of South Rockwell Avenue, Newcastle, Oklahoma. Staff has used this diagram that is on the screen up here several times since we started getting a lot of applications in for oil and gas wells to show what the requirements are for the setbacks. As you can see, the pad site is located here. The green dot depicts a well bore. And then our requirements for our ordinance are 300 feet from well bore to adjacent property lines. So that's the blue or purple. 460 feet from the edge of the pad site to any protected use. Protected use being a dwelling, one of them is. And then also 660 feet from the well bore to the protected use. So these applications, we have 4 of them. There's 4 well bores. We're presenting them all at one time. Yes, you will have to vote on each separate one. But this is item 6E, F, G, and H. The UPOR 2023-20, 21, 22, and 23. This is the location of the property here, outlined in blue, and this is the pad site that they are coming in with. It's 2,000 feet east of South Rockwell on Southwest 16th. This diagram, so the 660 foot radius plat showing here, so the furthest well bore, there's 4 well bores, and if I can get my cursor to work. So here's the northmost well bore in the south. So what staff did, and these were also supplied by 4 Point, is we have them do that radius to show each one of the protected uses being dwellings, because there is dwellings there on each one of these properties, on each one of those lots. The closest dwelling is 661.27 feet. The farthest one is 1,019.42 feet. That's for the 660-foot radius. The 460, which is the edge of the pad site to the protected use, the closest dwelling is 478.66. The furthest is 727.52. So those are within the requirements of our setbacks. And then also, this is the 300-foot radius, which is the well bore to any lot line. The closest one is 584.96. The farthest is 611.55. So they're meeting all three of those setbacks that are required. Planning staff did prepare also other maps, but through Planning Commission did make recommendation for approval of all 4 UPORs. There was public comment regarding this. It was brought up that at Planning Commission, that protected use being a platted lot line as a protected use. The Planning Commission Chair, Mr. Harness, also stated at this time that staff would look into it, and we'd have our attorney look into it and to discuss that. And we came back with that because there's a dwelling on these lots, it's not the lot line that's protected use, it's the dwelling. I'm happy to answer any questions. Planning Commission did make recommendation 4-0 to approve these UPOR 2023, 20, 21, 22, and 23.
Define that last part again about the platted. I was not reading it.
Sure. I did want to mention that for sure. At the Planning Commission meeting, it was brought up that when you look at the definition in the oil and gas ordinance of protected use, it lists several structures and buildings, and then it lists licensed businesses, and then it also lists the lot line of a previously approved residential subdivision. So the argument was made that that second or third phrase in that definition, the lot line of a previously approved residential subdivision, was a requirement that could not be met with those distances. So if you apply those same distances, the 660 feet and the 406
The 660, the 460,
and the 300.
and the 300,
That
yes.
if you apply all of those, if you look at the lot line of the Quail Run subdivision, even though they have dwellings on it, you cannot meet those requirements. So the Planning Commission Chair asked that we take a look at that, and provide an opinion on that. The Planning Commission Chair's recommendation was that when that ordinance was passed, it really dealt with protecting dwellings, and that last phrase, that third phrase was added really to protect property interests of an owner who may have come in and platted a residential subdivision before the oil and gas well permit was requested. Now, I did ask our city clerk to try to look at some, see if there were any minutes or legislative history that supported that recollection. And my understanding is when that was adopted, I think Camille wasn't the city clerk then, or was Kelly, and somehow that didn't get recorded, so I don't really have.
Oh, I
anything
was
to-
acting city clerk at that meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I don't have anything other than the recollection of the Planning Commission Chair, and also visited with other council members that were here at the time that was adopted, and that also was their recollection. So based on that legislative history, we do interpretation of ordinances, or the courts are going to look at trying to give meaning to all of the words used. And so I provided council with an opinion that takes a look at those issues and sent that out to you before the meeting. I will say that the resident who raised this issue, Mr. Bertoni, also had a legal opinion prepared, and that was done by Mr. Cooper Hahn. He sent that to me, and we talked about it, and we shared our opinion. His opinion is also a reasonable interpretation of the ordinance. I also feel like the opinion I gave is a reasonable interpretation of the ordinance. I did try to point out, with the way the ordinance is written, that the council does have some discretion on establishing those distances if they feel like it's necessary to meet the intended. So some of these particular charts that we asked the planning commission the planning staff to approve, to prepare, tries to illustrate to you that none of those distances, even if you accept that interpretation that it's the residential lot line of the previously approved residential subdivision, none of those are less than 250 feet. And then the ordinance, if the council feels like the application meets the intent, then they can actually modify those distances and do that in accordance with it. So it really is council's discretion to take a look at this and decide whether or not you feel like these applications meet the intended.
Was this, the ordinance was passed like in 2018? 18, okay, so I wasn't here.
Well, our goal at the time was to protect.
You three were here, right?
Yes, the protected uses, the structures. And we took lots of different shots and tried to do everything we could to protect structures, businesses, those type of things. The intent, you could actually have a private subdivision in the city of Newcastle with 5-acre lots. And a house in front of that 5-acre lot that's 660 feet deep, and that would add another potentially 500 feet to a required setback, and that was not our intent when we wrote the ordinance, because we knew, just like this instance, it's getting tougher and tougher for companies to find a way for a location to be able to put these oil and gas wells. And so we wanted to do everything we could to protect the uses, the residences and the businesses. That was the intent of our.
I've always embraced a desire, and I don't think I achieved it, but I always wish that we had, and in fact, I made this note last month, and it was on my comments for today. Why do we not have at least a minimum distance from the pad site to property line? And so, I agree. What really matters is where the residence is, but if it goes right up, like the first proposal last month, would have to be right on 16th Street. Stone, 5-iron, no more than 5-iron will meet maybe 300 away, but it's awful close to another property, that pad site. So I wish we did have some. And I have a high respect for our attorney, and I have no reason not to have a high respect for the other gentleman. But I would tend to read that the other way too, that it was a restriction. So I think our problem is that we allowed it in there or didn't catch it and clarify it before. But
It's not as clear as we would like it to be.
excuse me.
It's not as clear as we would like it to be.
Right, and I think there's an argument for it, then why is it in there? And is that really the original intent? I think it was. But I wish we did have some protection, property line pad.
So,
We do have, we have pad site 2 protected use.
right,
That's the 460.
but not property line, pad line.
And then we have the 300, which is the well bore to the property line.
And kind of how we did that, we were looking at that time of what the size of a typical pad was, which I believe was about 400 feet square, somewhere along in there. When we were trying to figure out all these numbers, and then we figured that if it was a typical pad and they cited those well bores in the center of the pad, as they typically do, then you're going to get that distance from the protected uses, and the pad will not be any
Right.
closer.
Yep, you are right. You are right. That was our safety point, that we will designate the distance to the well bore, to the property.
Right,
And is that our 460?
Yeah.
That's the 300?
And then we wanted to make sure that if there was any equipment located on that pad side, that it was also the distance from the protected use.
It would be 300 feet.
But if a resident's home was right on that line, it wouldn't pass anyway because we have the other dimension. Yeah, I do remember that now. That's, that was our safety net right there. 300 feet.
I will go ahead and show you the next two slides that depict what is in question and give you those distances. So staff prepared this map that is showing the distances from the pad, like you were just talking about, Councilmember Reed, from the edge of the pad to the lot line. So the closest lot line under 460 feet is 310 feet, 0.24. The farthest is 427.61, which is well above that 250-foot threshold that the council does have the right to adjust those setbacks as written in our ordinance.
Which one's the 310? I think I'm looking at the same picture. I
So
see
this one right here,
322 is what I'm.
this one right here. So because they're so small, I had them, we put out the furthest and the closest.
Well, no, I mean, I think I'm looking at the same picture, but I think it says 322 is just.
The shortest distance is the 310.24.
Yeah, but I must be looking at different.
Yeah, I'm looking for that one in the corner we see is 341 and 322 above it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see.
I don't see a
310
310, anyway, it's above the 310. 322 is the lowest. I see.
This one right here is 310, right here.
So far, we have not,
222 of your package. 222.
Okay, I'm on page 176.
And then we also did from the well bore to the lot line. So the closest lot line under 650 feet is 580.16 feet. The farthest is 657.43.
And that maps 223.
if I'm convinced our intent was that the pad site with the protected use prevails over that third one. I'm getting there. But I have no appetite for reducing setbacks. We're not yet. And the only reason I've stated, to my knowledge, right now, the only reason I consider a reduction is if the property owner said, we want that.
They gave a waiver.
Not just, yeah, a waiver,
Mhm.
and that we prefer that, not just a waiver, but, yeah, I guess a waiver would be their approval. But to do it for any other reason, I have no appetite for it. But I may not need that if I'm convinced that the intent is that the protected use prevails over the property line.
So if there's a dwelling on it, that's how staff has interpreted the ordinance, and that's why we came up with this diagram to show, and historically, that's what we did. A protected use is a dwelling, a business, it's a structure, because it's to protect the safety, wealth, and welfare, health and welfare of people, of residents and structures. And so that is why the protected use being a dwelling is or a structure, a home, a business, a school, a library. And so that's how we have done in since I've been here, and historically from what Commissioner Harness had said, that is the way that it has been done.
So what you're saying is that the platted is, in the event there's not a dwelling there yet, we're going to do it because we don't know where they're going to place it on the lot, so.
That is correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood it right.
That's correct.
Okay.
if there was not a dwelling, then we'd have to go to that lot line.
To preserve in case they went right.
Correct. Which they couldn't because there's setbacks.
Well, true.
So you have your setbacks
True.
for dwelling
But still.
and even for accessory buildings, so they would never
Still wouldn't
be.
be right up on it. But
Correct.
then it would still come into play at least for, once they get to the setback, then how far, right?
Correct.
Okay.
If I could, Warden Harness, Mr. Chairman. In response to James' question, just reiterating, the recollection that we expressed the last student's Mary commented. We were doing these, one of our problems was we expanded the setbacks out too much. You could get it to where you couldn't drill in the center of an 80. And we knew that wasn't going to be reasonable. And we came up with these and we counted on the additional distance to the well bores as being a major factor. Did those, and we've always measured to the structure, to the best of my knowledge and all of them. Like some of them been here for most of that duration. So this is consistent with what we've done in the past.
So you're saying it was, if we had gone too far with it, then we would have been going up against the reasonable ordinances to allow for, so.
And virtually, I mean,
Is that
there are
what
some
we're-
ag tracks in Newcastle that you'd be able to do, but very, very few because they'd all be just about too close to the property line. If you overdid your setbacks, and this was a selection that got us pretty reasonable distances and safeguards by getting that extra pad, using that extra distance to pad.
So protecting our people without going as far as losing a fight for reasonableness, which is very vague.
Any folks want to go planning commission staff at the moment? All right, the applicant, have any comments?
Just a few.
All right.
Can I propose on you to we could go. Right, thank you. Dale Cunningham, on behalf of the applicant, 4 Point Energy. My address is 499 West Sheridan in Oklahoma City. We were here last month on wellbore applications just to the south of this. It is close to the street. And we were here, we needed a waiver, we knew that going in. We needed a waiver on those prior applications. We thought the benefit was that the lease road from the main road up to the well site where the wells would be more beneficial to the community. We recognize what the company did in regard to those applications, not granting the waiver. Understood. So we had these in the works. These four. These are called River Ridge North. That's what we call them. From our point of view, they satisfy all of the setback requirements of the city. This issue about wellbore, pad site to property line, or is it structure? That's something we discussed with the city staff early on in this process. So this issue is not new to us. However, we agree with the council of the city that what we have done in terms of these applications satisfies both the letter of the ordinance as well as the intent to protect the protected use. And I agree with what the mayor said. The city allows, for example, if you plat something 5-acre lots, you can have a really large lot that would expand the potential protected use if you know, if the argument on the other side is accepted, then it could potentially expand the accepted use so there'd be no place in the city to drill. Or a lot of places would not be available to drill. It seems to me that would be a reasonable reading, that the other side has a reasonable reading of the setback. What we have done is consistent with what the city has followed since 2018, when this ordinance was adopted. We believe that these applications are not only satisfy the commission, the city council ordinances, but we believe that they satisfy the intent that the council had when it adopted the ordinance. Now, there are a number of 4 Point representatives that are in attendance. We're here to answer questions that you might have of us.
If I remember correctly, last time you guys were talking about a 24% sound wall around the property.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes?
Is that SBC 25, is that what you're planning on, or
Yes.
SBC 25? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what they have proposed.
Okay.
If we can do this, I mean, I wasn't here, which, looking from the outside, if it wasn't the intent, then they could have just said to the dotted line, right? But they specifically did difference, meaning there was a different interpretation of where there's a dwelling versus where there's a line. Like, if they only intended to take it to the line, you could just have the line and never mention the dwelling, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? So it makes me think that there was a distinction between the two for a reason. Otherwise, we could have just said the property would have been done. Just my thought, was seeing from the outside, because I wasn't here when it was discussed, but.
So our primary goal with the vacant is sure we got as much distance as we could with those structures, homes, businesses. Is there anything else special that they're doing different than our ordinance proposed? No. Is there anything that they're proposing that's different than what our ordinance is, other than the 24?
The 24-foot, and then, the, hospital, grade mufflers, so there's not gonna be any combustible engine, correct?
That's
On that,
So, if my understanding, all of the motors will be downhole motors, they
Yes.
will not be utilized as gas lift,
that is correct.
but there will potentially be compressors at some point in time on the location, I'm assuming. Should there be a need to, well, should there be a need to pressurize the gas to
I'll let,
market?
Yeah, I can eliminate. Benjamin Sellers, drilling engineer for 4 Point. So, in addition to the regulations, we've done ambient studies on the sound for each location. And we also did modeling, sound modeling, 4D sound modeling, so with time. So we've modeled all the sound equipment, or all the equipment that we will be using during drilling operations and during fracking operations, and saw if it was gonna be within regulation. If it wasn't within regulation, we would do a mitigated model. So just quickly, and I can send you the modeling results, but as far as sound is concerned, all locations don't require any mitigation. However, on the Riva Ridge, we opted to do a full wrap around for optics and for just sound, because of the neighbors, and we want to be good neighbors. With the other two DSUs, they have partial sound walls, 24-foot sound walls, and again, they're within the under 75 dBs, but actually as low as 50 on the drilling. But we opted to put sound walls there just to reduce the noise, and that's generally directed where there is urban development on those sites. So that's as far as the sound is concerned, about as above and beyond as you can go with the third-party vendors. doing the ambient studies and doing the modeling. And then once we get out there, we'll apply the sound walls.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from council, on staff, or any of the applicants' representatives? All right. If not, as Janae
Yes, sir.
said in her initial comments, we'll be addressing E, F, G, and H together, so we'll have one comment period on these 4 particular agenda items. Might remind any potential speakers that all comments will be addressed to the council. If there are any questions that need to be asked of the 4-point representatives here, those will be asked, and the council will have 4-point come up to the podium. Speakers will only be allowed at the podium one at a time. We'll limit the speaking opportunities to 5 minutes per speaking opportunity. So now we will open up the public hearing concerning this agenda item. Please state your name and address for the record.
I change up the definition of protected use on slide. No, I don't. That's all. That's all. Hello, my name is Cooper Hahn. My office is 522 Colcord Drive in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I have been recently retained by Brian Attorney as well as Ryan Biddle. These are property owners adjacent to the subject site. Mr. Attorney owns the larger parcel directly west of the subject site. Ryan Biddle lives in Quail Run. I believe there's also multiple residents here from Quail Run that likely share some of the same concerns on the site review today. I have reviewed the June 12th City Council meeting in which these wells were kind of put before you initially, kind of on a preliminary basis while you guys were reviewing the alternative location further south, or Southwest 16th. It's always been represented to you that the wells before you today in the pad site meet your setbacks in your ordinance. It's seemingly been uniformly stated that that is the true, and frankly, I believe that that is just simply inaccurate. I've read Mr. Bryant's memo, and I think my thoughts were also shared with council, so it comes no surprise that I do respectfully disagree with that. And it really just comes down to, what does the ordinance say? So a protected use is defined. It's defined with very plain, clear, easy to read language. It's defined as any dwelling, church, public park, public library, medical facility, pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, or elementary, middle or high school, public pool, senior center, public recreation center, or licensed business, or the lot line of a previously platted residential subdivision. Mr. Bryant made kind of 3 different points as to, buildings and structures and things of that nature in the platted lot lines. The truth of the matter is the definition says any of those qualify as a protected use. So the real question is, if it's in there, then it's protected use. Plain and simple as that. I am not privy, unfortunately, to the mayor's recollection when this ordinance was passed. I would say, unfortunately, neither are citizens. And frankly, neither would a court, if a court were to interpret this. So, being an attorney, I have to look at it as how a court would interpret this ordinance. I believe firmly that they would see that this is a plain and ordinary, straightforward ordinance. Citing the Supreme Court and reviewing ordinances or statutes, because they're interpreted the same, the cardinal rule of statutory construction is to begin with consideration of the language used, and courts should not read into the statute exceptions not made by the legislature. What does that mean? If it's not stated in the ordinance, it can't be applied. So stated further, the court presumes the legislator intended what it expressed in the statute, and the plain language of the statute will be followed without further inquiry. Again, what does that mean? How would a court interpret this statute? Well, I'm confident that a court would determine that this is very plain and clear language that your citizens could read and readily ascertain whether or not that protected use was listed in the definition. So the question that could be presented to a court, or is really presented to this council, is a lot line in a platted residential subdivision a protected use? And I think based on the definition, the answer to that is unequivocally yes. It is listed. If it's listed, it qualifies. It's a protected use. Your ordinance listed out any of the protected uses available to it. This is unequivocally listed. Therefore, it is entitled to the exact same setback spacing requirements of all the other protected uses. It's not treated differently. What does that mean? That means the lot line of any residential platted subdivision is to serve as the measuring point. 660 feet from wellbore to lot line, 460 feet from pad site to lot line. In my opinion, and I believe strongly that a court would see this as fairly plain and simple. If it's plain and simple and not ambiguous, then the court is not going to inquire any further into the legislative intent. They are simply just going to apply the language as they read it. There's just piles and piles of case law that tells us this is how the court is going to interpret this. It is clear that Quail Run is a platted residential subdivision, and it is clear that they should be afforded the protection that the citizens read whenever they open up the ordinances to see what was going on. I'm very concerned with the removal of this protection from a legislated ordinance, that if you remove the protection that they're entitled to from their lot line, the citizens have been misled. Where are they supposed to go to read about the ordinance? If they see, well, I'm protected to my lot line, I get 660 feet, I'm okay with that, then good. But if you come here and remove that protection based on some intent that no one knows, there's no documentation of it, it's based on recollection, I think that's very concerning for your citizens, and I think also a court very simply would find that to be reasonable. I think it's very clear that based on the maps 3 and 4 within your staff reports, I believe they're all the same throughout each of the staff reports for all the four applications, that this does not meet your setbacks. Frankly, I was able to watch the June 12th YouTube. I believe there's multiple comments about how, as Councilman Reed stated, there's been some hesitation on reducing these setbacks. It's clear the ordinance allows for the reduction of setbacks. This council determined that that's not necessary today. All we're asking for is a continuation of that. Don't reduce the setbacks. These lot lines are protected. 660 feet to wellbore, 460 feet to pad site. That's exactly what the ordinance says. That's exactly what your citizens have relied on. And that's exactly plain and ordinary language of the ordinance. So we would just ask simply for a continuation and no reduction in these setbacks. And there has been some discussion as to when that would be appropriate. I don't believe here is appropriate. There's been multiple mentions of 80-acre parcels not being able to meet setback. Well, it's a 150-acre parcel. There are areas where they can absolutely meet the setback. Going to lot lines, no problem. Those options haven't been explored, and I'm not really sure why. Certainly, this pad site and these wellbores can be moved further away from these residences and these lot lines to meet the setbacks, which is certainly going to alleviate the majority of these concerns. And I believe there's several citizens that are gonna get up here and cite these concerns. And I know this council is conscious of those concerns that landowners have when these well applications come before you guys. I'm very aware of it. I know you've heard about noise. I know you've heard about lighting. I know you've heard about, contamination of water. I understand you guys have heard that over and over again. Well, you also put forth these setbacks. You took a long time to do it. You made sure they're reasonable so you could comply with Oklahoma law. We're simply asking that you just continue to enforce them, especially when there's other pad sites available that would absolutely comply with all of the setbacks. So,
Give me a little bit extra leeway because you do have, we're representing two individuals.
sure, and I'll try. Thank you, Mayor. I'll try and wrap it up. I do think there's still some concerns over noise. I just noted in the staff report, they noted a prevailing north wind, which is going to serve to reduce noise. I believe it's a prevailing south wind, pretty much common. all of central Oklahoma. I think that's inaccurate. And if you're relying on that to dampen the noise, it's not going to work. So at the June 12th hearing, I believe one of the representatives stated that, maximum noise goes up to 77, 76. I believe staff report notes that it's an average of under 75. Okay, well, could that be lessened if they moved it to a site that met your setbacks? We certainly believe that it could. So a lot of these concerns that these neighbors have can be alleviated by simply complying with the ordinance as written, as they read, and as they relied on. So with that, we would ask for you to deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any additional public comment?
Russell Thetford, 1,000 Spring Lake Road.
What was your name again?
Russell Thetford.
Okay.
1,000 Spring Lake Road. I was here also last month. So, again, like I said last month, I'm disabled a bit. I've got sleep disorder as it is. And I understand the noise ordinance, the regulations. I've read the regulations. I've worked in industrial areas pretty much throughout my entire life. A lot of time in the military, 20 years in the military. Been around noise my entire life. I'll just bring you to this point last night is I understand the noise regulations, the readings, so forth. I like to know what those readings were last night when I was standing on my back patio, listening to what's basically without water being there, basically it just sounds like I'm at the lake. And that's where I go to get my peace. That's why I moved out here after I retired from the military. Because I wanted the peace and quiet. I got tired of the rigmarole of all the noise and all the chaos that I've been in for 20 years. So last night, I got to listen to the insects chirp. We got wildlife in the area. I see deer running through. We got coyotes I can hear. I can hear the owls. I can hear the dove in the morning. That's going to disappear. Those sounds that I've joined this community with to enjoy, to spend the last of my time here, is what I'm going to lose. Never going to get that back. And like I said last month, I support the oil and gas industry. I have no problems with it whatsoever. But I keep hearing the term neighbor being thrown out by people who are not neighbors. They want to be neighbors. They want to be good residents of the community. Well, they're not. They're not residents here. They don't pay to support this community. And I have the right as a homeowner, as a property owner, to defend my property up to my property line. It includes my property and my family. So how can we change the protection that I have by a simple vote? I'm not going to waste your life time. I just want you to know that what's going to happen if this is approved is going to change this community's life. Every single resident in the community, these are the ones that aren't able to be here tonight. I spoke to several of them that cannot be here tonight because of work, whatever constraints, medical reasons, they can't be here. But they share the same beliefs and the same concerns that I have. And I just ask you to take all this into consideration. Thank you for your time.
My name is David Harvey. I'm 1316 Spring Lake Road. My wife Julie and I, we just spent about the last 2 years building our dream home on Spring Lake Road. We moved in October of last year. And so now we basically are going to be looking out our front door into a 24, 25 foot wall, whatever. That's going to become our view where we have spent a fortune building our dream home, and this is what we're going to see. We had no idea this was going to happen. We felt like we're moving out here. We've got our 2 acres. We got our lake behind us. This is awesome, and this is going to be taken away. I also feel like that we've talked about that it keeps being talked about that the setbacks, we're meeting the setbacks, and that we're meeting the letter of the law. I definitely don't think this is the spirit of the law. If you have a 40-year-old neighborhood that is basically surrounding these well sites, and that's where they're gonna drill. Plus, they're gonna be fracking right under our property. So I would encourage everyone, and I know everyone here probably isn't gonna take their $5,000, whatever you wanna call that, to waive their rights, because when we start having earthquakes, and we will, when they have problems, and they will, and we have whatever ends up happening and your property is damaged and your homes, our brand new home is damaged, you need to make sure you have your legal right to, and the Oklahoma Supreme Court did find that you can sue the energy companies for damage. So just keep that in mind. Don't take their money. And I would encourage the council not to approve this.
Council, I'm Brian Materney. I reside at 2133 Southwest 16th. I'm on the west area of the drill site, the proposed drill site. I'd like to share a personal experience I had that's relevant to this case. I travel to Minot Air Force Base, Minot, North Dakota, quite frequently. There's a town right near that I've traveled through called Williston. Some of you may be familiar with Williston. Williston, the demographics and the size are very similar to Newcastle. It's a very nice town. They started with a few well sites just like Newcastle did, mostly in outlying areas. They found a lot of oil. They started moving more and more sites in. They started approving more permits. The town welcomed it. It brought money in. The hotels were filled. They started relaxing the setbacks. They opened up more sites in residential areas like this. The town started going backwards. The hotels reached capacity. They started bringing in man camps for the additional manning. Crime followed, prostitution, drugs followed the man camps, of course. The people of the town, the good people that have lived there hundreds of years, their families, they started moving out. They started moving to Minot, Bismarck, and other places. And those people aren't going back. These are good people, the ones that man the libraries, the ones that fund the 4th of July and do a lot of the volunteer work for the town. Those are the people that were leaving. Now, is there a parallel to Newcastle? You tell me. I think it's on the same trajectory. And I don't want to see that happen in Newcastle. I don't want it to become another Williston. And I see that trajectory. You have the power to change this right now. This is a watershed moment just for this one site. When you start moving into residential areas, where's it going to stop? And I don't want to see that happen. Please don't turn this into another Williston. You know, you have the power. The city attorney is correct. You have the power to reduce setbacks. You also have the power to increase setbacks if that's due. Maybe that's what's due here. I don't know. You have that power to change the trajectory of this city for decades, maybe forever. So please consider that. Please consider the power you have in where this town's headed in the future. Thank you.
Ryan Biddle, 1301 Spring Lake Road. I want to say thank you guys to the council. Thank you for respecting this process. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak to, the reasons why we're here, for things that we find significant in our lives. The ability to speak on behalf of protecting our families. Thank you guys for that. In my line of work, I took an oath to protect the citizens, not of necessarily this city, but the place where I work, and something I take seriously. You guys do this, and it's a position of service. So that's why I say thank you to being our representatives. What I ask is the same thing I've asked previously. I ask that you be our advocates. I ask that you advocate for the citizens and the position that you've taken to serve. And I think you guys are going to make a good decision based upon the evidence that you've heard. I'm going to say something that you already know, so in one ear out the other. Remember that this isn't just about revenue and bottom lines. This is about people's lives, so I appreciate it.
Bill Taylor, 1317 Spring Lake Road. I spent 25 years in the oil and gas industry. I'm not in it anymore. I've supported it. supported me and my family. However, this ain't Custer County, this ain't Deccan County, this ain't wide open land out here. So you're putting, the deal is, as I've, previous meetings, we've asked, how are we gonna supply the power to the ESPs? That is, grid power is what I was told. So is it gonna be grid power from the beginning? Or are we gonna put generators out there to kick it off and then supply power to it later? Also, it was said, is there gonna be gas compression? In the last meeting, it says there's no plan for gas compression. That's not true. There will be gas compression out there for gas lift. Because the ESPs degrade, they pull them out of the well, they go back down hole, they put the valves in, they put gas lift. So there's the deal. We're gonna have a big wall around us. That wall's never coming down. And all we're gonna have is noise. I've been around it. It's not quiet. So, please, this is a community that's been there for a long time. I moved out here in 2006. In that house in Clover. So, I just don't want it in my backyard. I've dealt with it. I've worked on it. I've built it. But this ain't wide open land out here. There's other sites to drill, and there's others, and they can bore a long ways. They do it all the time. Thank you, and I appreciate y'all service.
Hello, council. I'm Lisa Bach. I've been a resident here, a homeowner in Newcastle for 17 and a half years now. I love the Quail Run addition. It's very peaceful, away from the busy city. I'd hate to see a retention wall in my backyard because, I live at 2024 Southwest 7th Street. It'll literally be right behind me. I'm used to seeing the cows eating in the fields, which is very peaceful. I don't see how a retention wall can keep the environment safe when it's so close to us. It seems like the measurements are so tight that there has to be waivers and just room for error of the law. I don't think it's safe. I don't think our water's safe. I don't think our air's safe. My daughter's an architect. She also minored in the environment protection. And when I mentioned it to her, she was like, oh no, Mom, don't let him. It's dangerous. And so it really doesn't benefit us at all. I mean, what do we get out of it? Except for a bunch of noise, pollution. I love the animals too, like my neighbors do. I hear the coyotes. Like I said, I see the cows grazing. It's just, it's going to ruin the neighborhood. So I'm asking you not to allow it. Like my other neighbors say, there's plenty of room out there for oil rigs to be built. Not right in our neighborhood, please. Thank you.
Take a couple more.
Hi, Richard Newcomb, 1933 Quill Run. Emma and myself, we've lived out there for about 11 years now, and we love it out there. We love all of our neighbors. I'm really standing up more for my neighbors that are closer. I am off of the screen here, but you don't see the water reservoir on any of the pictures that I've seen. Everything runs from that ridge, and it ends up at my house. Yep. Everybody. That is my main concern. It's a beautiful place, and it is. The wildlife is awesome. I take pride in decorating my house for the neighborhood. I consider it every Christmas. So when everybody comes home, they know they're home. They get to see something nice. And I try to keep up with my place and things like that because I respect my neighbors. And the same like the guys that don't live here have said that they want to be our neighbors. You don't live here, man. I mean, we don't know y'all. You don't know how nice it is to live here and what it is that you're about to tear up for all of us. The animals, for one, the wildlife, the peacocks you hear just out of nowhere, or anything else that just goes on around the neighborhood. It's a beautiful place, and you're about to tear it up. Not council, but it's really sad. I mean, I was hoping to come out here and put in probably the rest of my life, but I don't know that the future looks real bright in that neighborhood right now. So I want to thank you for your time and your service, council. You guys do a great job. Thank you.
My name is Marina Dye. I live on 2032 Southwest 7th, and I just want to reiterate about the wildlife. I love being out there. I love the wildlife. Everything I do in my yard's for wildlife. We have a huge kite population. We have roadrunners. We have turtles like crazy. They don't know how all these things are going to survive, and it's so peaceful. It's just beautiful to be outside and hear everything. It's everything I live for, pretty much, just to be out in my yard and enjoy that there. And I just can't imagine looking where we always look out back in the pasture for wildlife or whatever and seeing all of that. It just would destroy our neighborhood. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Take one more, and then we'll close public comment.
Don Jutman, 1208 Quail Circle.
Say your last name.
It's pronounced Smith. Juntune. I just have a comment about the noise. Everything everybody said here is obviously valid on both sides. The noise is I was an audio engineer, retired for 38 years, so I know a little bit about frequencies and noise. And I don't know if it's appropriate, but I would just ask the council and everybody here, how many fans of rap music do we have in the room? Well, low frequencies, you can talk about putting up a wall and deadening sound. You can talk about decibels all you want, but we're talking about low frequencies here. I don't know if any of you have ever pulled up to a 7-Eleven or a stoplight and you've heard coming from somewhere around, you don't know where it's coming from. That's low frequencies of a woofer in a car. That's what we're going to be dealing with here. So I would just ask the council and everybody here to use their discretion and think about if you would like to have a neighbor all the time that was playing loud music and you're hearing low frequencies, vibrate the china off the table or whatever. And actually low frequencies can be destructive too. So I just wanted to make that point real quick. I agree with everything everybody else has said here, but as you're thinking about how you're going to deal with the situation, just keep that in mind. Would you like a neighbor, as everybody's talking about here, that was playing that kind of music? Not that there's anything wrong with rap music, I just use that as an example. But the point is the low frequencies. That's going to be really annoying, and it doesn't matter what kind of wall you put up, because low frequencies will get around that. So I just wanted to point that out to everybody. So thank you.
Sure. All right, this time we will close the public comment portion of our agenda items. And I appreciate all the public comment. It's easy to say it's okay when it's not right next to you. And we kind of alluded to it, but since 2018, when horizontal drilling came to town, we probably had 30 some odd wells drilled in the city of Newcastle city limits, some much closer than to residences and protected uses than this, because we did have a existing ordinance in place that did not have near the setbacks that we have now. So when we went to reviewing our ordinances and trying to get the most protections we could put in place for our citizens, but understanding that in Oklahoma, the mineral estate is dominant over the surface estates, which means that those owners or leaseholders of mineral rights have a right to extract their minerals, and that right is not subservient to the surface. It is dominant to the surface. So they have the ability to do that. So our city attorney happened to be a city attorney working with the city of Newcastle or city of Norman several years ago, and they tried to stop drilling in the city of Norman. They tried to stop drilling in the city of Stillwater. They ended up in the Supreme Court. Those cities lost. And then the oil and gas industry went to the state legislature and got a Senate bill passed that basically stripped all control away from the cities and towns. They left us with 6 things that we could control within reason. And as we've discussed before, you may or may not be here, reasonableness is only going to be determined in a court of law. And in talking with a lot of oil and gas attorneys, Oklahoma is a very oil and gas friendly state. So we developed what we felt were reasonable setbacks that would not be so stringent that it would not allow oil and gas industry to go down and get into their mineral estate that they have. So part of doing that is we know we can't zone them out. We know we can't get setbacks that are unreasonable. We know that they have a right to drill. So we've done everything we can to try to make that drilling as least intrusive as possible on the neighbors. It's never going to be good. It's going to be loud. Oil and gas operations are loud and it's going to be different. However, the drilling and the completion operations, what we've seen with the wells that have been drilled, which I think are, like I said, well in excess of 30 of these horizontal wells, they normally last 60 days total for wells. I would anticipate that would be the case here. It's not a pleasant 60 days oftentimes for those that are next to it, but it does go away. And once it goes away, what typically happens is those sound walls you're talking about, you don't want to see, will come down. There will be equipment on those locations for the duration of the time that those wells are operational. There will be tank batteries. There will sometimes be compressors. And it was brought up about the gas lift, and I'll double check this. I'll have 4 Point come back up and discuss this a little bit, but a lot, or virtually all of the wells we've had in town have been utilizing gas lift, which means there are compressors that are pressurizing that borehole to bring the oil out. 4 Point has indicated that they're going to be the first one in town that we're aware of that's going to use downhole motors to get the oil and not use gas lift. Like we talked a little bit earlier, that doesn't mean there won't be a compressor if need be topside to pressurize the gas to put it into the distribution system, but that's something that they can discuss a little bit when they come up. It was brought up numerous times of what is the benefit to Newcastle. If I could wave a magic wand and they could get their oil and gas without ever coming to the surface, that would be awesome. We are not looking for oil and gas industry to come to town. We're not, generating income off of this. They may stay in our hotels, but we don't have very many hotels in town. We've only got 2. And most of the people that work here, most of the time, they don't stay in Newcastle. They may eat here, but we really don't have a lot of restaurants either. So we're not getting a significant amount of benefit. We do have a fee that they pay. That fee is primarily to help offset damages potentially to our roadway, offset our inspection, offset things that we require them to do, staff time that work on these well applications. So with that, I'd like to ask 4 Point, if you guys want to come back up, ask you to talk about it. A couple of things that were brought up. One was sound walls. Once drilling and completion, first off, how long do you anticipate drilling and completion will take for these 4 wells?
Drilling each well will be about 16 days on average, is what you see with offset operators around the area. That's EOG, 89 Energy, Charter Oaks, Warwick.
Okay, and will you drill them all and then complete them all at the same time after drilling them all?
Likely the development strategy would be drilling an entire pad at one time. So, and economically it makes the most sense, and really for bothersome, it makes most sense not to run in and run out of an area for a long time. So, yeah, we'd be moving in, and the time that we rig down and move out with the rig, it'd probably be about 2 months.
2 months. Okay, and then what type of time frame do you anticipate to get those 4 wells completed?
Probably about 3 weeks
Total
for completion,
per well?
or the total for
For
wells,
4
yes, for the entire site.
So, you know, if we stretch that out to, a month, so you're looking at potentially 3 months drilling and completion total. And so after that point in time, question was raised, will you have electricity on site to run your downhole motors and any other electrical needs there, or will you have to run off generator power for a period of time?
Yeah, the gentleman is completely right that you would initially start with the SP, and that's an electronic submersible pump to dewater the well. After that, the grades over some period of time, it can be a couple months to 6 months, up to a year, just depends on the well. It's replaced a lot of time in that area with gas lift, so he's completely correct. You use a compressor to inject more gas to get your fluids up full. However, there's alternatives that don't require compression, and you see them almost everywhere, like in North Dakota. The pump jack. So that's rod lift, right? And you don't have any compressor there, you just have a pump jack. That would be bringing the fluids to the surface.
Okay. If there is gas lift compressors, all of our compressors have to be shielded with walls around them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But at that point in time, the only walls on site after drilling and completion will be walls around any compressors on site. Those 24-foot sound walls will come down, so that will not be the long-term view for the residents. Is that correct?
The idea right now, yes, is to have the 24-foot sound walls through the stages of drilling and completion. So that would be the production over a year's span is what you're talking about. And at that point, what is on the UPOR is required is fencing or some pretty much opaque fencing around production equipment right now.
And does the UPOR state sound walls or walls around the equipment if they have gas lift compressors on site? Do you know that?
Yes, it does, sir.
Okay. So there could be some walls around things, but it would potentially be compressors. We had walls, the rest of the stuff would have fencing around it.
Yeah.
All right. Council, have any other questions?
I'll just say, I don't know if I can articulate this correctly, but it's very difficult. I think it's always, when you're on the other side of the seat, because I try to pay attention to how things work, and what you can and can't do. And my family built, I think, 10 houses in that neighborhood. My parents lived there 18 years. I love it. I would move there if I could. Absolutely love it. My parents, Russell, my parents lived in the house. My dad did, wherever we went. And so I love it. I adore it. And there are foxes over there too. But when you get over here, it's like, as much as I want to do things, sometimes I can't, because we're bound to what the law says. However, that being said, I've just been sitting here looking while you guys talk and reading, and I hear the intent, but I don't know if we have the language to back it up from my seat. So, I don't, relish the idea of loud, noisy things in our neighborhoods all the time in the city. However, sometimes there are things we can do about it. Your argument is, like the mayor said, with the corporation commission on some of this, but right now I don't think we have the language. I think if we have a different intention, then that's not something we can address sitting right here. It's something we have to address we need to look at that and see if we need to reword it. That's just my take. So, that's right.
So are we discussing as a council now, or?
Yes.
Or still keeping-
No, common period over, and if there's any other questions for, the applicant, if not, thank you. Any additional questions will be a shout.
Many of our residents here are here for this, they're here for this event, and they were here a month ago. And then, and some of you all may have been here over the past few years. But just share what the mayor said. We've been going through this a lot. To my knowledge, no one I know has ever recruited a single builder to come in. The city does not recruit. We don't wish, it's not our area. We really encourage businesses, retail businesses come in, and sometimes that upsets our residents because they may not want a store next to them, but we do generate business the best we can. We've never, to my knowledge, none of us have ever pursued getting an oil well or these pads in here. None of us. None of us. And I live between two wells we approved about 4 years ago. Just a few hundred, probably 1,000 feet from one or 600 feet. But my neighbors are all closer to it. So we hear that the fracking part of it was pretty miserable for them. It didn't bother me as much. It bothered my wife. She complained to her council member, but it bothered her a lot. But it bothered some of my neighbors really bad. It bothered them the entire time. So we get that. But before, we didn't have ordinances to even back it up as far as we are now, and we let them convince us not to put walls all the way around it. We put walls around 3 sides of it, and where there wasn't a wall, it just layered. So we got that. After the walls came down, or in their case, they used storage containers for walls, which are pretty ugly. They finally came down, chain link fencing and barbed wire around. The looks of the well site isn't so bad to us, as far as just know it's a well site there. Nothing beautiful. It makes some noise when the winds are calm, you really can hear it, but we kind of got used to it. To my knowledge, it did not drive all the wildlife away, because it did for probably that first couple of months. But there's cattle grazing there near it, there's deer on our property, deer all across there, deer were crossing the other deer, rural deer was crossing and over the fence onto the pad side. So wildlife hasn't changed for us right now, although we love the wildlife. So we're in a pickle when we have things come to us. And I know this is almost irrelevant, but if someone wanted to come in and develop that 90 acres next to Eula, it would have the same effect on it. It'd probably have to be worse even. We can't say no to development. So please bear in mind that we're not sitting here just relishing these things, and we push back, and we push back pretty hard sometimes, but we don't benefit from having them here. If we do put the city into a lawsuit, which we're not afraid, I think our attorney is bigger than some of the other attorneys, but it would cost, I'm sorry, but it would cost a lot of money to our city. So we don't go out of our way to just say, hey, we'll see you in court. We try to avoid that too. So, I don't know, I'm just rambling on, but I just want y'all to know that the feelings are there. We're not sitting at an opportunity where we can just pick and choose who comes where.
could. As we talked here, I heard things being said, compressors being there, talking about when the downhole electric pumps were gonna be used. That wouldn't be the sole thing, there could be compressors there. It was bothering me a little bit because the planning commission, our last meeting, their last meeting, we discussed this, or this was discussed. It was that this would be an electric pad site. That was significant. Didn't sound like that tonight. But I've clarified. And the compressors, there may be compressors, and they do make noise, but they won't be powered by petroleum engines. They will be electric powered compressors. So we won't have the engine noise that we've had on other pad sites.
Yeah, it's on high line power.
Oh, that's good.
Will those compressors require any type of radiators to them? One like power. The reason I ask is a lot of our gas lift operations we've got through town can create a significant amount of noise.
The
fan.
current plan is to operate these wells, much like Charter Oaks is. They have high line power come to location, ESP. They will produce off the ESP for a significant amount of time, greater than a year. At that point, the well will be depleted to a lower bottom hole pressure than even gas lift valve system could get, artificial lift system. Then it will progress to a pump jack, which there's multiple of them all in the city to finally deplete the well. I don't see any reason why they would have a gas lift or any sort of compression on the location. And if it was, it would be a very small wellhead compression or vapor recovery unit. I mean, it's little like air compressor almost in someone's garage. So it'd be very small. They would be electrically driven, because if they don't have the big power source for the ASP would be used to the power capacity would be there for either electric motor to power a very small wellhead compression, which there are no plans on at this time, or for the pump unit, which would be much less intrusive than gas compression.
So we're talking like 4 downhole pumps and 4 pump jacks later on?
At some point in time, there would be 4 pump jacks on each well. The downhole pumps, though, it'll be, I mean, it won't be much, it'll look almost like that, with just a couple of hydrants on the side.
All of our pump jacks require that.
Yeah, but the gas engines are all,
Yeah.
no trouble.
Those won't be anything. Yeah. A noise generator.
No.
But luckily, being in an urban setting, there is significant power availability here. Unlike some of the rural areas that have been mentioned earlier that have runoff generators, no one wants those. It's just a temporary solution because building power lines can be a very significant lead time. Right now, luckily here, we do not have that issue. Thanks for letting us clear that up.
So, Jeff, I'll let you explain to us a little bit more about your thoughts. I know there's a question, we have got 2 attorneys with 2 different thoughts. Probably 3 if you can't coordinate, but I know what the intent was. However, you rendered an opinion on what you think your legal advice to us is. So that, and you might mention a little bit more about what I said about what we can control and the applicant's rights.
Yeah, I think you can read the ordinance with the 3 separate categories as I lined out in the opinion that I gave to you. It doesn't require you to waive any setbacks. You can follow the setbacks that are already in the ordinance, the 460 and the 660, if you read it the way that I suggested. Now, I do think Mr. Hahn's interpretation is reasonable. Uh, It's hard to know what a court will do with it. He makes some good arguments about, if you wanted the language vacant lot, as it applied to the lot lines of previously platted subdivisions, then you probably should have put that language in there. And it's not, even though that might have been the intent. So I think there's also some latitude in the ordinance for council if you believe that that was the intent. But maybe sloppy drafting, I wasn't here. Then you do have some latitude to say that if the court interprets the ordinance the way Mr. Hahn is suggesting, then you would reduce the setbacks to distances that are not less than 250 feet for both the pad site and well. And that's still consistent with the ordinance. Now that would avoid a lawsuit. It would be hard for them to win that because the ordinance is very clear that you have that discretion. Now, I think you've heard from citizens here, they're very nervous about you doing that, even though the ordinance says that. So that's a judgment call for you guys. Now, probably one of the most recent cases about this struggle between cities and the oil and gas industry was cited in the opinion. It was the city of Norman case, a Magnum Energy case versus the city of Norman. That opinion was actually written by a justice who was the city attorney before he got appointed to the Supreme Court. And so he's well aware of the struggles elected officials have, cities, citizens have, so struggle with these types of issues. But he did interpret the Senate bill that passed after we lost some litigation, both Norman and Stillwater, trying to hang on to some zoning rights and broader powers that cities traditionally did have. Once the legislature jumped in, they did limit cities' ability to about 6 things. Zoning is one of those things. But it all has to be tempered by what's reasonable. Alluded to that earlier. So I think if this gets litigated, it's going to be that question about whether that interpretation as suggested by Mr. Hahn is reasonable or whether it's not reasonable. There may be some focus on whether there are other ways that the oil and gas company can access their minerals. Maybe there are other sites, maybe they're not. That definitely is going to come into play, but most of the cases that have focused on reasonable regulation that cities and counties try to impose on the oil and gas industry have not been coming out in favor of the cities. But we're more than happy to litigate that. That's the council's desire, the citizens. But does that help answer your?
It does, and, I just want the citizens to understand the predicament the council is in. Like I said earlier, we can't wave a magic wand and say you can't do this. We don't have the right to say that. We've recently even had a little bit of discussions with the Attorney General on a little bit different case relating to oil and gas, and the Attorney General's staff has reminded us that we need to understand our rights after the Senate bill that our city attorney is talking about and what we're limited to. So there is, like Councilman White discussed, there is, concern about whether or not the ordinance that we put in place applies to the platted subdivision as a protected use. And if it went to district court, may or may not come out in the favor that it should be based on our ordinance. However, like our city attorney says, is that reasonable? That's where it all comes down to, because in state statute, we're only able to reasonably control those 6 things. And the reason is in the court's determination. And so that's what we've got to look at. And we've tried, like I mentioned before, we've tried to be reasonable with our ordinances to make sure that we provided as much protection as we could while still not basically banning the ability to drill for the individuals who had either ownership or lease of those minerals.
So if we were, if this were, if this application wasn't before us today, we know what we do, we know what we know now. We would be reconvening to clarify that statute, right?
We will. And you need to.
And we need to. And if we opted to keep it that way or make it even more clear that it does go to the platted line, do you think that would hold up? If we consciously selected that option, that'd be pretty good, right?
Well, I think that type of interpretation actually nullifies the long list of buildings and structures that are also in the definition of protected use. Because if you're just gonna do it to the lot line of a previously planned subdivision, why would you list all those other things? So that's the other side of the argument that the court would have to consider. Was it the council's intention to make it just the lot line of a previously planned subdivision when they went ahead and listed all these other things in the definition?
So that's where I'm getting to. That would not fly. That would not fly if we consciously chose to do that.
So, no good attorney will guarantee you a result. But those are equally valid arguments that can be made in the court. I can't tell you the outcome, but I can tell you, most of the cases across the state where cities are pitted against the oil and gas industry, the cities have not been winning. Particularly if it looks like it's preventing them from reasonably accessing their minerals. Because as the mayor mentioned, in Oklahoma, oil and gas state, the mineral interest is the dominant state.
And looking at this, we were figuring out, we've got all these odd deals here, but we looked at if there was an 80-acre tract that was 1,320 feet wide, how could they site an oil and gas location in there? If there are private subdivisions on each side of that, and their borehole is a foot wide, they cannot drill a well in the middle of that 80-acre section because they're going to be 659.5 feet away from those, if they put it right in the middle. So we would be effectively stating that they could not drill in the middle of an 80-acre tract of land. So that's one of the things we tried to avoid when I go back to about our intent, was making sure that if there was 80 acres that was 1,320 foot wide piece of land, they could site an oil and gas location in that 80-acre tract. If there happened to be protected uses or platted subdivision going on either side.
What you call being between a rock and a hard place.
It's no fun. It's not. And I understand, and I know, we know from history that any oil and gas well that's drilled in the near anybody, and we could expand our, if our setbacks were expanded to 1,200 feet. I get complaints from people who are 1,200 feet away from oil and gas drilling because they can hear it. Because they're set on their back porch and they can hear the drilling and the completion activity. They don't like to hear it. Well, the court will say more than likely that it's not reasonable to us to make an ordinance where people never hear it. So we had to set a reasonable, or what we felt was reasonable, limit on sound, and you're gonna hear it. People a quarter mile away are gonna hear it. Gene hears one that's a quarter mile, no.
That's why.
Well, the one north of you, yeah, it's half a mile from him, Gene hears this house sometimes.
Well, I hear my neighbors even more than I hear the wolf.
So it's,
And that's why we've had how many meetings just for oil and gas? Here's what happens. So every time we think about reasonable sound, then it gets so, I feel like I'm climbing through muddy bog of weeds every time. It's very, very, very hard. We go in circles because we want to do what we can, but we also don't relish the idea of spending our city money when we need improved water lines and we need a wastewater treatment plant to spend the money for it. But we need to defend our citizens too. Gives me But that's okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Oh, did I contribute one more thing on the noise issue?
On the podium.
One of the things that hasn't been, nobody's remembered it when we were here before, but when we came up with the 75 dB level, that's the level that in Oklahoma City, they allow commercial operations in residential districts. And that's the boundary line sound level that they allow. So in established redevelopment districts in Oklahoma City where they allow commercial to go into a residential district, at the boundary, they can have 75 dB. And that's the number that we chose. And partly because it's hard to say it's not reasonable. But that's how we tried to hold the level to a real minimum. And we do, we tested to that. I know that people make work toward that.
Can I comment really quick, or you done?
We'll let you one more from the podium, please, and then we'll,
Just really quick.
just for clarification.
Yeah. On the sound issue, I just want to make sure no matter how this gets ruled, no one has came up to us, none of the citizens, and asked anything of us yet, or even tried to communicate on this. I would like to let you guys know that we're actively wanting to work with the neighbors. That's why we went through the modeling steps. And if there's something we can do, then let's discuss it. I can give you my number. I'm the drilling manager, and we can talk about it. Any of you guys, audio specialists, talked about bass sounds. There's pieces of equipment he probably knows better than I, but that are specifically for the low frequency we can set by it. So there are steps that we can do. You're right, you're not going to take away a rig.
Address your comments, council, please.
Okay, sorry. You're not going to take away a rig from oil and gas drilling, but we will do our best to work with the community to make it as palatable as we can while we're here. We haven't even started oil and gas drilling for a point here in the Eastern Anadarko. We've got a good track record in the Western Anadarko, I'd like to think, and that's one you guys can look into. But there's data that we have that none of the community has asked us about yet. We've ran all those models and no one has asked us yet about any of those models. So I implore you guys to dive into the data a little bit with me, and we can try to at least get a solution that is the best compromise to work with. Thank you.
I got a question. On your preliminary studies, did you take in what would be considered as a new sound while the drilling is going on, and what those levels would be?
Yeah, so initially what the study is that it's an ambient sound study, and we go to compliance points. That's like the next or the closest urban area, you know, and they'll set up microphones for a few days, do 72-hour sound recording, and then we'll get the background noise. From there, they input that into the model, the background noise, so you have both weather and the ambient sound studies inputted. Then they have, in the model, they have drill rig specific, so if we're using a cactus rig, they went out, the sound companies, and measured with sound studies the different noise levels of these different capabilities of rigs, right? Different sizes of rigs. Same with frac fleets. So we can compare an electric-driven frac fleet, or a quiet frac fleet, or a traditional frac fleet. And all of our models right now are using a cactus rig, which is very common to the area, which the rig is very low as far as the sound is concerned. It's like 55 dB, where your guys is 75 cutoff. The frac gets up there depending on what direction, around 70, but that's a conventional frac fleet. So there are options that we can use an electric frac fleet or a quiet frac fleet that encloses the motors, the pump trucks.
So
Which one are y'all looking at using?
It depends on timing and whatnot. We have talked to Liberty, like, as you can imagine, the electric and the quiet frac fleets are used mostly in Colorado or California, those areas where there's high urban development. So we've actually talked to Liberty about getting a quiet frac fleet down, from Colorado during that time. So that is an option to do. As far as economics are concerned, it's definitely going to be uneconomical for us to do it, but it would be in the neighbors' benefits, But if no one comes and talks to us, it's
I think they're here talking.
right to you guys, right?
Maybe you should
To
address
you
the
guys.
debates that are
And we'll make sure that, if you guys do your own, we'll make sure that your contact information is available.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Anything else?
So I would say you're very informational and providing information. Sometimes we don't know what to ask and we have to drag it out, what's available. So I appreciate you, really appreciate offering it without us, because we don't have industry knowledge, so sometimes we don't know. And sometimes I find that sometimes that's to our detriment. So I appreciate you offering what's out there.
There's a lot of data, and I've heard the public speak today. There's a lot to be spoke about, and I don't want to waste people's time, but I'm willing to sit down and chat about any of these subjects with anyone.
Well, I don't think this council is going to adapt or adopt an ordinance that goes to a property line. I don't think we will. And, when I don't think that was what we meant. This happened to us 4 years ago. Some language got into a document that was really confusing, and we changed it, really upset the property owners next to it, because they thought we were just trying to figure out a way to make it happen. Wasn't the fact, just ordinances are really difficult to get right. I think our intent was, all we talked about was getting that bore away from the property of the protected use. So if I'm hung up, what I'm hung up on is kind of the technicality that I'd like to accommodate our citizens who say, let's use that technicality to say no, but in my heart, I don't think that's right. I think this is part of oil and gas coming in and having the right to drill, so it's been a struggle for him. But I think we do need to get together and clarify the language.
I agree. I guess we will entertain a motion.
This has passed our planning commission, correct?
It was passed the
Yes.
planning commission.
Yes, it did.
It was passed with the recommendation or notation. Jim's going to give you an opinion on that issue.
Is all the requirements that there's from the planning commission in our
In the UPOR?
yeah,
Yes.
you are Frank. This is the evil.
And this is,
Yeah, 60. Make a motion for approval, 6E.
A motion is second to approve of agenda item number 6E.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Jean Reed,
Yes.
Marcy White. Ron Ed.
Yes. Item number 6F, public hearing, discussion, and possible action, planning commission recommendation to approve an application for each bid under review for conditional use permit for an oil and gas well, RC Severe White, Full Point Energy, Regal Ridge, 28X33-9-4, 2HB, north location, in section 21, township 9 north, range 4 west, Indian Meridian, McLean County, Oklahoma. Property location, north side of Southwest 16th Street, approximately 2,000 feet east of South Rockwell Avenue, Newcastle, Oklahoma. Case number UPR 2023-021.
And, make a motion, for item 6F
For approval.
for approval.
I'll second.
Motion second for approval of item number 6F.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Jean Reed,
Yes.
Marcy White.
Yes. Item 6G, public hearing, discussion, and possible action on planning commission recommendation to approve an application for each bid under review for conditional use permit for oil and gas well for RC Severe White, Full Point Energy, Regal Ridge, 28X33-9-4, 3HC, north location, in section 21, township 9 north, range 4 west, Indian Meridian, McLean County, Oklahoma. Property location on the north side of Southwest 16th Street, approximately 2,000 feet east of South Rockwell Avenue, Newcastle, Oklahoma. Case number UPR 2023-022.
Motion to approve item 6G.
Motion second for approval of item number 6G.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Jean Reed,
Yes.
Marcy White. Ron Ed.
Yes. Item number 6H, public hearing, discussion of possible action, planning commission recommendation to approve an application for submit under review for conditional use permit for oil and gas well for RC Severe White, Full Point Energy, Regal Ridge, 28X33-9-4, 4HB, north location, in section 21, township 9 north, range 4 west, Indian Meridian, McLean County, Oklahoma. Property location on the north side of Southwest 16th Street, approximately 2,000 feet east of South Rockwell Avenue, Newcastle, Oklahoma. Case number UPR 2023-023.
Make a motion to approve item 6H.
Second.
Motion is second for approval of item 6H.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Marcy White.
Yes. This time we will take a 10-minute break before we take up item number 6I. recommendation to approve an application submitted on review for conditional use permit for oil and gas wells for Kim Osborne and Tina Osborne, husband and wife. Will Osborne and Sarah Osborne, husband and wife. Osborne Energy. Marty Jones, 32X5-10-4-1HA, located in section 29-16 North, Range 4 West, Indian Range, in Plain County, Oklahoma. Property location within property located on Northwest 40th Street, approximately 1/2 mile east of North Council Road, Newcastle, Oklahoma, based on UPOR number 2023-024. And as with our last application, there are 4 agenda items related to this oil and gas location, separate wells, and any public comment on those will all be done during the first agenda item.
Council, so item 6I, 6J, 6K, and 6L, as the mayor stated, these are all presented at once. It's one new pad site with 4 new boreholes. This application is on a 235.47 acre tract. The pad site is approximately 5.51 acres. Owned by Tim and Tina Osborne, and this is for 4 Point Energy. This is located on Northwest 40th Street, approximately a 1/2 mile east of North Council Road. Here's the location here for the pad site. The screen that you're looking at here, we have the 660-foot radius plat on the left side of the screen. It meets those, it meets that setback. The closest dwelling is 1,012 feet, 0.36 feet. 1,012.36 feet. On the right side, we have the 460-foot radius map, and the closest dwelling there is 707.31, so it meets both of those setbacks. The well bore to adjacent property lines, the closest line is 323.31 feet. The farthest is 468.68 feet. This is how they will access the site. They will access on 37 and up Council over to 40th to the Smarty Jones well site.
And if you've ever been to the water plant, they will take the road again to the water plant, basically, or adjacent.
Actually, so that's not correct. You would be coming from County Road. We'll be building about 1.5 miles east from access to the location.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see that.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay. My apologies.
Very good. Awesome.
So you're building that?
That's correct.
Okay. My apologies. So the north is ag, to the east ag, south and to the west. It is adjacent to our, I'm sorry.
So you
Go ahead.
guys will be coming off County Line Road instead of Council?
Chris Allen, Case Management. Initially, we were going up, what is that road? Council Road, to by the water treatment plant, taking that route up that way. That road had access issues. Once we got on the dirt road, it comes for private property. So we worked out an agreement with the Osbornes, and we're going to Osborne's property. He's got an existing road off of North County Line Road that runs back to the east, and then we're going to construct a new lease road the rest of the way on Mr. Osborne's property to the location.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. So as I was stating, the surrounding uses are agriculture and vacant land. The Newcastle water treatment plant is to the east, and to the west there's single family, but it far exceeds our setback distances. They are going to put up the 24-foot sound wall. The same thing with the hospital grade, no gas down mufflers. And Planning Commission, they did submit their sound study, their mitigation and reclamation plans, and the well bore, as I stated, meets the setback requirements. Planning staff recommends and supports approval of UPOR 2023-24 25, 26, and 27. Planning Commission did make recommendation for approval 4-0. I'm happy to answer any questions. And that you know the applicant is here.
Any concerns about residents?
We did not receive any protests regarding this application, or these applications.
Is there any public comment concerning this agenda item?
Kevin just pointed out page 266 is the route, if you want to take a look at that route.
Very good. This council will need to hear from applicant on anything, probably going to be saying that we've heard a lot about this evening.
Well, I do have one question, because I haven't seen the distances. What is the distance from where you're boring to where our water line goes through, down through there, that comes back to our plant? Any idea how close that is?
But from the well bore to, so this distance here,
Well, I know we have two lines. We have two lines that's coming from the well field. Where is that in relation to our lines?
I do not know that, sir. So where would the lines be? Where would our lines on here be? Here's the treatment.
Well, they're going to be north of that pad site there on that side, but I'm not positive where they turn.
I think I might have an answer.
Well, I mean,
There are, okay, yeah, I don't know if that's exactly what you're talking about, but when I, registered the, basic treatable water with the DEQ, they refused a deep surface setting casing because of the public water supply, being about 0.9 northeast. There's about 3 public water supply intakes there. So it's about a mile northeast.
Jason Goss with Trace Management Works on 4 Point. What he's talking about is where there's public water supply wells to the north that'll require extra casing stream. As far as like, you're saying like your water line where something doesn't get hit.
Correct.
Have a similar issue that has happened, I believe has happened in the past. That we don't know. What I do know is everything will be, 811 dig prior to any of that. And if we can, someone that actually knows where the lines are could come out.
Yes, I guess. So,
I have Kevin cast it so you can see it there.
so they're going to be, other than that one, what's the one that goes off to the west?
Oh, yeah.
Just so you get to their pad site.
That's okay, there we go.
Yeah, it's right on the north side of those trees to the northeast of water. So, which, like, is that green dot is that a water well or water line?
That's water line.
Is the green dot a well or what is that?
That's an approximate location
Those
of
are
the well site.
approximate location. It's measurement that you
She just has to posted that up there to measure.
Kevin, can I approach that map?
Yes.
When we did the switch to chloramines, and we did some work out there, and we were looking where to chlorinate, I really thought the water lines came up the west side of that road. You got 2 raw water lines coming from the wells. You see it there. I thought they came through this side and then over there. But I looking at that map, I don't think, it didn't look like their pad's gonna be on your water. But yeah, we'll mark it for sure. Makes me think we might mark it now.
Yeah,
And
do the one call.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How deep are they buried? Or
they're
should be
gonna
buried?
36-inch pad. They're gonna be 36-inch pad.
I think maybe
it might be prudent to do one call and then pothole the hydro excavator to
Yeah,
find.
I think so, just to make sure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We can make that condition as part of that, the UPOR for that.
That's not passing in
Take that condition to be along with that.
Oh.
What's your thought? Another man, I think, I mean, this is a good location, I think it's possible. No plan subdivision, very close.
Can you drill a lot of wells in there?
I know. I thought about relocating.
All righty, any other questions or comments from council, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion second for approval of 6I with the condition
The condition of,
that they locate the pothole those.
locate pothole city water lines.
Second?
Yes.
All right, motion second for approval of item 6I with the conditions.
Mike Muller.
Yes.
Gene Reed.
Yes.
Marcy Martin.
Yes. Item 6J, public hearing discussion of possible action on planning commission recommendations for approving application for oil and gas. Use permit on review for conditional use permit for an oil and gas well for Tim Osborne, Tina Osborne, husband and wife, and Will Osborne and Sarah Osborne, husband and wife, 4 Point Energy, Marty Jones, 32X5-10-4-2 HP, located in section 29, township to the north, and 4 West Indian Reading, McLean County, Oklahoma. Property location within property located on Northwest 40th Street, approximately 1/2 mile east of North Council Road, Newcastle, Oklahoma, UPR 2023-025.
Make a motion to approve agenda item 6J with the same conditions.
Second.
Motion second for approval of item 6J with conditions.
Mike Muller.
Yes.
Yes.
Marcy Martin. Yes. Ron.
Yes. Item 6A, public hearing discussion of possible action on planning commission recommendation to consider an application to be permitted review for conditional use permit for oil and gas wells for Tim Osborne and Tina Osborne, husband and wife, and Will Osborne and Sarah Osborne, husband and wife, 4 Point Energy, Marty Jones, 32X5-10-4-3HC, located in section 29, township to the north, rank 4 West Indian Reading, McLean County, Oklahoma. Property location within property located on Northwest 40th Street, approximately 1/2 mile east of North Council Road, Newcastle, Oklahoma, UPOR number 2023-026.
Motion to approve agenda item 6K with
Second.
Motion second for approval of 6K with conditions.
Mike Muller.
Yes.
Gene Reed.
Yes.
Marcy Martin. Ron.
Yes. Item 6L, public hearing discussion of possible action on planning commission recommendation to approve an application for permit review for conditional use permit for oil and gas well for Tim Osborne, Tina Osborne, husband and wife, and Will Osborne and Sarah Osborne, husband and wife, 4 Point Energy, Marty Jones, 32X5-10-4-4 HP, located in section 29, township 4 West Indian Reading, McLean County, Oklahoma. Property location and property located in Northwest 40th Street, approximately 1/2 mile east of North Council Road, Newcastle, Oklahoma. Case number UPR 2023-027.
Motion to approve agenda item 6L with conditions.
Second.
Motion second for approval of 6L with conditions.
Mike Muller.
Yes.
Gene Reed.
Yes.
Marcy Martin. Yes. Ron.
Yes. Item number 6M, public hearing discussion of possible action on planning commission recommendation to approve an application for use review for conditional use permit for an oil and gas well for Mansfield Wayne Smith and Sheridan Smith with 4 Point Energy LLC as applicant, Fraser 22X15-9-4-1HA, located in section 22, township 9 north, range 4 West Indian Reading, McLean County, Oklahoma. Property location approximately 45 feet north of Southwest 16th Street and approximately 400 feet west of South Main Street, Newcastle, Oklahoma. UPOR number 2023-028.
Good evening. As you stated, this is item 6M, 6N, and 6O for the Smith property for 4 Point Energy for UPOR 2023-028, 029, and 030. This is a site located just west of Main Street on Southwest 16th Street. Here's the pad site. The pad site is approximately 5.23 acres on the 46-acre tract owned by the Smiths. As I said, it's approximately 45 feet north. The pad site is of Southwest 16th and 400 feet west of South Main Street. Also, I'd like to point out the Surface Damage Act. 4 Point Energy does have permission to drill on the Smith's property. So on the left is the 660-foot radius map. The closest dwelling is 769.09 feet. The farthest is 1,027.27 feet. There are three, this application, and they're showing 4 drill holes, but there is only 3 coming forward. One of them, they didn't receive their OCC permit. They'll have to come back to planning commission and through city council or to planning commission and city council for that additional well bore. On the right side is the 460-foot radius. The closest dwelling is 488.91 feet. The farthest is 795.42 feet. For the 300-foot, for the well bore to the property line, the closest is 312, and the farthest is 315. Here's that. And the property line is to the middle of Southwest 16th for the Chickasaw Nation property to the south, and then the Smith property to the west. So they submitted two routes for their truck. During planning commission, we discussed both those routes. They had made recommendation only to come onto Main Street and not take any other route where you'd be traveling eastbound on Southwest 16th. You can only access the site and no trucks are allowed past this site on Southwest 16th Street to the west.
So just gonna come up or down Main,
And turn right in. So to the north, we have the zoning is PUD, and then also moderate industrial district. To the east is general agriculture and CC2 and IR. To the south is ag, and to the west is PUD as well. There's vacant agricultural land. There's going to be retail commercial to the north. To the east is vacant ag and industrial. That would be across the street on 62 for Main Street. South right now is vacant ag land and single family residential to the west is the pet distribution. The applicant submitted all their OCC permits to drill for these 3 wells, mitigation and reclamation plans, along with the required maps and the noise study. The well bores meet all the required setbacks. Planning Commission did make recommendation for these applications. And I would also note that the same conditions apply with the 24-foot sound wall and the electric all electric motors in the pad site, and also the pad site depth is to be off the road and winged at 50 foot. So there will not be any truck traffic walking on the road, and no truck traffic allowed to sit on Southwest 16th. Planning Commission, like I said, did make recommendation 4-0 for approval, and staff recommends approval for UPOR 2023-028, 029, and 030. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think we will skip straight to public comment on this one.
Anyone ask if there are any objections posted? Was there any objections during planning?
Mr. Smith who's present this evening, did come. Yeah, we didn't receive any formal written protest.
Is there any public comments concerning this agenda item?
Well, I was concerned, are we discussing now, Mayor?
Yep, no, I'll close public comment at this point in time.
Okay, so I was kind of just really concerned about our friends in the Chickasaw Nation who have already announced their plans to build there. So I just, was asking myself, does that put them at risk in any way? That well site there. I mean, they're not there now, but once they build, let's say they build out several hundred patients there, should a accident occur? I mean, they can't evacuate very easily. I'm not trying to be dramatic, I'm just asking myself, is there any thoughts on that? Or all of you may have had experience with similar.
Well, you never say never, there's always potential for tank batteries. That happens, it's pretty rare, I've seen it happen, I've been very close to one when it did happen. It's, that would probably, I would think, that's always potential, but it's very, very rare. Other than that, you need the requirements of those, I guess, per the corporation commission, as long as they do everything, I mean, there's literally 10,000 of wells across the state, and it's pretty rare you hear of an accident that has a detrimental impact on the neighbors. And the biggest ones you see that they're going to be the lightning strikes, the tank batteries, and those are a big fire.
Which could strike a building itself, no matter, we know that.
It could. Absolutely. So I would think that, they're gonna follow ordinary practices, which, there's old wells all over the interior of Oklahoma City and
To have capital.
you don't see a lot of issues. But you never say never, but I don't anticipate. And also, with the proposed drilling schedule on this, it's likely, almost assured that these particular wells will be drilled and completed and in operation prior to Chickasaw Nation beginning in construction activities on the site. So,
They're just doing disregard, but they're not, I think they would have been here. That's just, they're out of it.
Well, the question would be, was agreeable that once this site was done, we're finished with drilling, completion, and production. If something could be done out there on the south side of this pad, landscaping, whatever that may be, to free that area up because of the hospital coming in.
And Main Street right there.
And Main Street right there.
that would be very good.
And to build on that, is there space between that and Main Street for any other business?
Pad size 45 feet north, I think. Well, now, with Main Street, it's covered by trees.
Okay.
You won't be able to see it.
And so there will be any other structure going in there?
Correct.
Between the two, between Main Street and the building?
Well, there could be structured later on, I suppose. I mean, it depends on what Mr. Smith.
But there are trees there now?
There are trees there now.
But I like the idea on the south end.
With something as a barrier, as a landscape barrier, whatever that may be, to protect the visual from that, multi-billion-dollar facility that is coming on the opposite point.
And so I guess this question for 4 point, you're intending on going north with all 4 of these wells, is that correct?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And so is there any intention of coming back in the future and going south with additional wells, or?
No, that has already been done with the Juanita and the Dude well.
Okay,
Actually,
If I may interject, it's related to 4-H. So the two furthest east wells, right now is the 3-H, it's up there, the 4-H is coming as soon as we can get it pushed through. They will actually backfill in the northeast quarter of that section 27 and then come back up, so it would be a 12,500 foot back.
Okay, so you're going half mile south.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? Like the city manager said, is there any way that after completion activities were through, we could get some landscaping on the south side of that pad to provide some screening to the south, for that, like some multi-million-dollar facility that we're kind of take into account the investment that's going to come across the street from that.
Right. I don't see a problem with that. Usually when we work with the landowner in a surface use agreement, you have a 6x400 pad. After you've done your drilling and completions, you reduce that pad size, and try to get back to the, prior look. So it goes to usually 400 by 400, depending on what your agreement is, but yes. So, on one side, we will reduce the pad size over time, and two, we're willing to work with you guys on some sort of landscaping barrier for the street. Yeah, the trees or what have you.
Does that make sense to you, Mr. Smith?
Yes. Yes, it does. Now, there will still be a route in and out.
Sure.
Ingress, egress, it'd just be. Or,
Yeah,
I mean-
most as possible can, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Okay.
If I may, one more thing. So we currently do not have a surface use agreement in place with the surface owner. That's why we have to go through the Surface Use Act. So we would not have the right to plant those trees. We are willing to do it, but that would be something that the surface owner would have to agree to.
Now, Mr. Smith, since they're obtaining the right to drill the local surface standard shaft, it can be explored at current time, so they're not going to
We're not opposed to it.
Yeah.
Is the point I'm trying to make. We're not opposed to it. We just don't have the right to do it.
Would y'all pursue that then? Would y'all pursue that as a possibility?
Yeah, yes, we would pursue that possibility.
Likely, we'd have to take trees out to make the pad, and we could use those same trees and move forward if you'd be okay with that.
Depends on the tree.
What's that? Depends on the tree, I guess.
Not the Eastern red cedar.
Not just any tree.
Right.
Red Cedar, they love
Fancy trees.
That'd be a good plan.
I want matchsticks.
Kudos, so far the best named well.
Right, so- I don't have any say on the naming, but they're all horse names, I guess, from like the Kentucky Derby horse names.
Oh, no, that's right.
No.
Actually, the Then wasn't part of that, the racer was advertised.
There you go.
Yeah.
We're racers here.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
I see, okay.
Think
All right. Yeah, I see. Wondering why you like that.
Black and white check flags.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
We have an interesting mascot.
I'll make a motion, Mayor, if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Like what I have, where I'll make a motion to approve item 6.
Motion selected for approval of item number 6N.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Jim Reed,
Yes.
Matthew Bonnet, Robin.
Yes. Item 6N, public hearing discussion of possible action, planning commission recommendation to approve an application for spring review for conditional use permit for Rolling Gun Salt Manson Lane Smith to Sheridan Kent. This 440 LLC is applicant, registration 22X15-9-4 to HB. located in section 23, township 9 north, range 4 west, Indian Meridian, McLean County, Oklahoma. Property location approximately 45 foot north of Southwest 16th Street and approximately 400 foot west of South Main Street, Newcastle, Oklahoma. This is UPOR 2023-029.
Make a motion to approve item 6N.
Motion second, for approval of item 6N.
Yes.
Henry.
Yes.
Marcy White.
Yes. Item number 6O, public hearing discussion of possible action on planning commission recommendation to approve an application for use permitted on review for conditional use permit for oil and gas well, Mansell, Blaine Smith, and Sheridan Smith. With 4 Energy LLC as applicant, pressure 22X15-9-4-318, located in section 22, township north, range 4 west, Indian Meridian, Plain County, Oklahoma. Property location approximately 45 foot north of Southwest 16th Street and approximately 400 foot west of South Main Street, Newcastle, Oklahoma. Case UPOR number 2023-030.
Move to approve item 6O.
Second.
Motion second for approval of item 6O.
Mike Fuller.
Yes.
Henry.
Yes.
Marcy White.
Yes. Item 6P, public hearing discussion of possible action on application for use permitted on review for conditional use permit for oil and gas well for Mansell, Blaine Smith, and Sheridan Smith. With 4 Energy LLC as applicant, ratio 22X15-9-4-4HB, located in section 22, township 9 north, range 4 west, Indian Meridian, Plain County, Oklahoma. Property location approximately 45 foot north of Southwest 16th Street and approximately 400 foot west of South Main Street, Newcastle, Oklahoma. Case number UPOR number 2023-031, continued to the July 31st, 2023 regular planning commission meeting. Due to no issuance of OCC permit, there's a motion to continue the sign to the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Second.
Motion second for continuance.
Mike Fuller.
Yes.
Henry.
Yes.
Marcy White. Yes. Robert.
Yes. Item 6Q, discussion of possible action on adoption of ordinance number 949, amending Newcastle Code of Ordinance, Title 10, Business Regulations, Chapter 110, General Provisions, Section 110.10, Business Licenses, by increase of license fee to $50, and adding provisions for additional fees of $30 per instance for city issuance being not required under Section 110.11.
This ordinance amendment, item 6Q, came about because our business license currently is $10. That's in perpetuity. That's not an annual fee. They only have to come forward to get one business license. The last time that ordinance was updated was 1990. And so staff felt it appropriate, as much time as we spend dealing with new businesses coming into town, with site plans and dealing with their parking, and if they need a building permit, and if they have their health department permit, if it's a food establishment, that it's appropriate to raise the fee to $50. Planning Commission did make a recommendation and we added the including processing of documents for external agencies or re-inspections, to add the $30 per instance fee to, if we have to go out and do a re-inspection. We did look at other communities. Tuttle has a $35 business license, and they do have an annual renewal. And then their renewal is $10. Norman and Moore are by each service, so they have food and beverage licenses, an array of different licenses, but not business licenses. So we thought it would be appropriate at this time to review our business license ordinance and make this amendment. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I agree.
Did you add language
We
to
did.
clarify?
Yes, that this shall include processing of documents for external agencies or re-inspections of any business.
Oh, okay.
There's a second page to that. The second page to that.
There was a staff report, staff memo.
Okay.
Yeah, that would have been 2 pages.
What what is the processing documents for other agencies? What's that?
So like, a OMA, so we have to do a certificate of compliance for, medical marijuana dispensary or, a grow or processor.
Okay.
Move to approve item 6.
Second.
Motion second for approval of item 6P.
Yes.
Jean Reed?
Yes.
Item 6R, discussion of possible action on adoption of emergency clause, ordinance number 949.
Move to approve item 6R.
Motion second for approval of item 6R.
Mike Collins?
Yes.
Jean Reed?
Yes.
Marcy
Yes. Item 6S, public hearing discussion of possible action on planning commission recommendation for conditional use permit for commercial disposal well for Patsy and McMahon trustee of Juanita Family Trust, Charter of Production Company LLC, for the Juanita Saltwater Disposal Number 1, located in southwest Florida, section 27, 9 north or west of the Meridian, and Oklahoma, property location, approximately 1.5 mile west of the intersection of Southwest 24th Street and US 62. 10 North Old East Road, right wide, to this location, Newcastle, Oklahoma. UPR number 2023-013. Make a motion to continue this item to our next regular scheduled meeting.
Second.
Motion second for continuance.
Mike Collins?
Yes.
Jean Reed?
Yes.
Marcy White? Yes. Tom?
Yes. Item number 7.
7.
Yeah. Get there.
Why did you call Sean to Z there?
Discussion of possible action regarding approval of extension time for payment of permit fee by EOG Resources under City of Newcastle Code Section 113.048, following proposed well permits. Tomcat 2H, POR 2023-009, Tomcat 3H, POR 2023-010, and Tomcat 4H, POR 2023-011.
What's like, do you have something
No, I can address it for you.
Yes, go right ahead, because I'm not sure what the reason is.
Sure, Jody Cole with EOG. This is really substantially identical to what we were doing last month related to the SIP fires. Just due to our drilling schedules and drilling plans, we're requesting an extension to the permit application fee so that it's more in line with when we propose to drill these wells. In hindsight, we probably should have done all of this last month, but the way it goes.
Good to see us once.
Yeah.
We specify time or just money with that end or what's,
No, I believe they actually have up to 1 year to drill.
oh, okay, so they're limited by that.
Right.
I'll move to approve item 7.
Motion second for approval of item number 7.
Mike Collins?
Yes.
Jean Reed?
Yes.
Marcy White? Yes. Tom?
Yes.
Wait all this time.
No. Yeah.
He's got a pretty deal on this.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I am thinking you.
Item number 8, discussion of possible action of award of bid authorization to enter into contract with Houston Notice to proceed for Houston Avenue Street Improvement Project. You got it.
A long time coming.
So it is a long time coming and bids are higher than we wanted. We had one last project. We've been working on it off and on for 5 or 6 years, I think. Trying to find some stuff. And then in, I believe it was February, we found out there's a second water line. So there's a water line on this road behind each curve.
Tell me.
Yeah. So that added about $60,000 for the project.
Why they put a curb in there? Only three with a curb.
Yeah, that's probably right. That's probably right. So we've got options. We can award it as bid. We have asked and talked with the low bidder about the possibility, Mike, instead of ag base and separator fabric, going with a stabilized base. We think that could save, $70,000-$80,000. We could.
It'll save a little.
It'll save a little, but it's not as good.
Yeah.
It's not as good. what we spec was as good as we could design that road.
What do we spec?
Basically gravel,
Okay.
gravel and then asphalt on top of it. If we go with, most of your subdivisions nowadays are a stabilized base. They take the soil that's there, they'll put Portland cement or depending on what it needs, to treat it and firm it up, so to speak. We went with an ag base. We went with storm sewer. It's higher than we wanted. We can award it as is. We can negotiate with the low bidder to see if we can get that down, or we can take it back and rebid.
An opinion on the base or life expectancy of each one.
Ag base is the best. Life expectancy, no, I mean, your asphalt's gonna wear out before the base is, but it's better. It's better. I mean, everyone that comes in, they'll tell you how stabilized base and they'll compare it to ag base. Well, there's a reason they're comparing it. Their city crews, whenever they do a job, John Canary typically says he prefers ag base. He does ag base. Our developments are not. You know.
Yeah.
It's cheaper. That's the reason. That's the bottom line.
And that's the street closest to Veterans Park, right?
Yes.
You never know, one of these days we may need that street for.
But
A little bit.
in the south end, you've got 2 feet of fall in 1,000. There's nothing. We're going to drain it between houses, back to the west, to the roadside ditch. That's completely full of utilities in there, and we wouldn't have probably 0.2 of a foot fall going through there just to get back there. So I mean that we were dead in water there too. So that's, you know, everyone thinks you get a flat piece of land, well, that's perfect to develop, but it's not. You can't get it to drain.
Where would you go, Caleb?
I'm recommending not to do it and rebuild the project.
Really?
I am, absolutely. $940,000 is our list for the year.
Yeah.
There's no way. I mean, there's just no, we have other projects to do as well. This is roughly 3/8 of a mile with 20 houses, 25 houses, or on that road, not that it's not needed, absolutely.
Right.
But for $940,000, we can come up with something different. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, we would like, if we do go that route, we've asked Kevin, but we would like 30 days to explore some options. There's some other things, Mike, we could tilt the road, all of it to one side and possibly get away from, we need to check cross sections, possibly get away from having to shut down one of the water lines and redo every water service. That was one of our expenses. I'd like to say we could. I can't promise that we can get out of that. But
What type of lines running down here?
4. It's a 4 on each side.
We fixed the killer pothole in the meantime, it's through.
Well, we actually did some coal plants on here recently.
Did
but
we?
we
I've been through it. I've heard about it though.
Yeah,
So
I just think
What's that?
So we're talking about just putting all their drainage on.
Putting
one
all the
side?
drainage on one side instead of in the middle of the road. Probably use the curb inlets as a junction box. He's got, I'm thinking he had 6,000 apiece on manholes. We could save another 20,000 in there. Getting it all on one side.
Now, we may not get this down to where we had originally thought it to come in, which was $650,000. We may not get it down that low. But if we can save a couple $100,000,
Yeah.
you know, and knock it down to 750-ish, somewhere in there, I mean, I would feel much more comfortable than 900.
Yeah. The thing that really kills you on the ag base is all the hauling that they have to do when they come in. You know, they got to dig everything out to make room for it, and then they got to bring rock back in.
Well, there was wasn't there 1 or 2 bidders that talked about the pre-mobilization piece?
Yeah, but they talked about that, but mobilization was, the low bidder had 75,000 on mobilization. That's basically you're paying them to move in there. They'll hide a lot of their costs in that. If you look at it, when they move into a job, they don't really have any quantities. They haven't, they brought all their equipment in, they're ordering materials, they're getting work, but they don't really haven't completed anything, and they're not getting a paycheck for probably a couple of months.
Oh, I see.
So
Like
it's
you
not,
said,
it's not like you're just paying them extra to show up. They're gonna hide a lot of their costs, that otherwise would be in a unit price for some of their construction. Your bigger jobs, you typically pay mobilization because there's a lot of effort.
How wide is it? How wide is that street?
It's 20, it ranges, it ranges from 22 to about 26 or 7 in spots.
We make it a narrow street, make one way.
I mean, the school right there, I mean, school traffic is a
Well,
concern.
I mean, would you want to consider a stabilization instead of ag base? I mean, again, I like ag base, but all of your new roads in town are stabilized.
But that's in the marshiest area.
It is, it looks clayey, Mike. It looks really,
Breaking up.
it looks like a lot of clay in there, so.
How about we just, not award and you guys go back to the drawing board, work with city staff and.
We might do an alternate bid on some of this stuff and then let you earn the big bucks by making a decision later.
Works for me.
So don't give me big bucks left if y'all don't give us bid down.
All right, I'll make the motion to not accept any bids and to, rebid after working with our engineers for different options.
Okay.
See what we come up with. Have a second?
Second.
Motion second. We're, rebid, item number 8.
Mike Fuller?
Yes.
Gene Reed?
Yes.
Marcy White? Yes.
Yes. Item number 9, discussion of possible action on award bid authorization to enter into contract and issue notice to proceed for the State Highway 76 water line relocation project. It
was item 6 one ago.
Oh, we were looking at it.
Yeah, we're running the 12-inch on.
Okay,
I think you did
that
all
was
those
me.
3.
Okay, so I'll make a motion
Yesterday,
for
wasn't
agenda item 9.
Second.
Mike Fuller?
Yes.
Gene Reed?
Yes.
Marcy White? Yes.
Yes. Item number 10, discussion of possible action on approval and authorization to enter into service availability water service agreement between the City of Newcastle and the Newcastle Public Works Authority as supplier and the City of Blanchard Municipal Improvement Authority as purchaser. I'll make a motion to approve that with the same language as the Public Works.
Thank you, I just realized. Second.
Motion second for approval of item number 10 as amended.
Mike Fuller?
Yes.
Gene Reed?
Yes.
Marcy White? Yes.
Yes. Item number 11, discussion of possible action on approval and authorization to enter into service availability water service agreement between the City of Newcastle and the Newcastle Public Works Authority as supplier and the City of Pueblo and the Public Works Authority as purchaser. No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, okay. Motion for approve agenda item 11 as the, what you just said, as the
Same thing with Public Works.
Public Works.
Motion second. Where's the second?
Second.
Motion second for approval of item number 11.
Mike Fuller?
Yes.
Yes.
Clairvoyant? And Marcy White? Yes.
Yes. Item number 12, discussion of possible action on approval of authorization to enter into a service availability water service agreement between the City of Newcastle and the Newcastle Public Works Authority as supplier and the City of Golden for the water authority purchaser. No action on that agenda item. Item 13, city manager's comments.
Animal shelter is coming along. We actually met with them last week on the Zoom meeting, I think it was. Anyway, they now have a completion date on the animal shelter of December of this year instead of January, February next year. Fire station is still moving along as well. I mean, it's still scheduled out to be on time. They've actually gained a little bit of time now. I don't know about now with the rain yet. But they're still working out there even after the rain. So that's looking really good as well.
That's really good.
And, we are meeting tomorrow with Guernsey to finish up the conceptual design of City Hall. Now, it's just conceptual, it was the very small engineering fee, just to give us an idea of what it would look like, where we need to be, where we actually need to be right now, and how that can be expanded in future years. So, kind of looking forward to that, to see what kind of square footage we can shrink this down to.
So that would be, remember how large is that site?
13 acres total.
13, so obviously the city hall would be there just south of the fire station.
Correct.
I was driving by the city the other day for that's really generous for City Hall.
Do you remember the name of the addition that the development due south of that?
Newcastle Farms.
Newcastle Farms.
Alrighty. Item 14, council member comments. I would like to notify the council that this week we did receive a resignation from Councilmember Clay. His duties with his business have got to the point that he doesn't feel he can provide adequate time in the city of Newcastle and in his role as council member, and he doesn't want to do anything halfway, and so we will be moving forward with seeking more than likely individuals to appoint for the remainder until our next election, even though it's a 4-year term that has just started. Council appoints, then that individual will go until the next election. Which will be in the future, so that. So,
I'm sure you'll have hundreds of people you come through.
Yeah.
Volunteer.
There'll be some people from. We don't shop as well.
Yeah, well, that too.
So anyway, any other council member comments? Seeing none, item number 15 is adjournment. Second. Motion second for adjournment, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?